All right, let's call the meeting to order, please. Judy, if you do the roll.
Yes. Neil Butnick.
Here.
Judy Neville. Tom Schulte.
Here.
Amy Carroll. Here. Todd Lavieri. Michael Chinzon.
Yeah.
Chris Labrie.
Here.
Victor Alvarez. Maria Weingarten. Here. Robert Hamill is on. Okay. Colin Dobbin. All right, all present.
Okay. If I could have-
Kevin here is
and
our
the first
first
selectman's
selectman
here.
is here. Yeah.
He's always here. Motion to approve the minutes from the February 10th meeting, please.
So moved.
Tom? Second? Second, Neil, all in favor? Aye. Michael, you're good? Opposed, none? We don't have to see anybody, right?
No,
Yeah.
we're present. We're all.
Okay.
Why were they amended?
There was one word Tom picked up
I
on
made
word
some
the, and it should have been they. That was the
Oh, good
only
catch.
amendment.
I read them.
We give out awards at the end of the year, at the end of the budget
Oh,
for
wait,
who
but this
caught the
was-
most minute typo. And so far, Tom, you're way, I like.
Oh,
it
you're an
We may be
expert.
mathematically eliminated, actually.
That's why we like lawyers.
The thought, it should have said they.
Oh, right.
So that was it.
All right, so
It's
Important
text.
stuff.
it was amended prior to being presented.
Yes,
All right.
I put the amended ones on because I posted the original, so I put the amended ones. on.
Understood. All right.
Can't help myself.
Tom's getting the job down and review all the minutes before I tell you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, some good news. We're not doing a budget update. First line item on the budget, we had that as a placeholder just in case we needed to go through anything. And so far, so good. We are continue to just gather feedback and input from all of these meetings on capital, on follow-up items, and we're processing all of those, and we will all of next week. And on March 1st at our next meeting, we will do a real detailed budget review. Tonight, we're also going to do just a high-level capital discussion, but we won't go through capital until March 1st line by line like we normally do. And so that's the plan. Just a reminder too, we do not have a meeting March 3rd. It's the following Tuesday, March 8th,
Mhm.
just to make sure everybody's aware of that. I think it's been posted, right, Tucker? That's all.
It's in the process.
Yeah, it's all in the process of being posted. I just want to make sure everybody's aware. Okay. All right. So with that, we will go to Russ. Welcome.
Wake my laptop back. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Had a great meeting with the liaisons and happy to either go through operating line by line, address individual questions, whatever the board would prefer. If you'd like me to go through. the
I
line,
think it'd be
you can.
just a good to go through. You're going to talk about this.
Yes, that's the capital.
So why don't we do this? Why don't you give a slide? For the,
I do.
line
I
items?
provided it. I don't
Yes,
know
sir.
if it's in the deck there, or I can plug in over here. I don't know if that's an
fine.
option.
Yeah, I think it would be good just to give us the overview of your, how you doing?
Yeah.
What do you need? You know,
Absolutely.
how the,
Absolutely. So at a high level, we have, it's been yet another, challenging year with the continuing COVID, which is knock on wood, looking like it's finally abating. We are positioning OEM. We're very excited in this year, hopefully around June, to actually do our first true tabletop exercise with the various department heads, first responder agencies, which we haven't done in a couple of years because of said pandemic. We also have responded to a number of incidents, and also in particular requests from the state for COVID COVID test kit distributions, mass distributions, and we've increased our partnership with the CERT team. And as you'll see in our budget, it reflects that we're helping to continue to equip them with the equipment they need to operate safely, because they have just been an unstoppable force for good in town, showing up at the drop of a hat, whether it's in the middle of a snowstorm to get test kits out in a parking lot, or those sorts of activities. So that being said, our budget overall reflects some changes. The biggest things is we actually consolidated some expenses from other groups. So the fire department had I'll go under offsite contractors. The fire department had a line for where they were paying for the country club cell tower bills. part of the agreement at that tower, which supports our communications infrastructure for first responders. That was being paid. A lot of our radio infrastructure is paid in pieces across all the different first responder agencies. So over time, we've been sort of consolidating them into emergency management, as it makes sense to have that sort of central, not only want to say oversight, but administration, so that we're able to ensure we're getting the maximum cost efficiencies for town. We also onboarded a new GIS system. So we have 3 licenses in there. So that's why that line is higher. Additionally, the GIS license, just to briefly mention, is we went from Google Maps for tracking our large storms, hurricanes, and events with power lines down and trees down and those sorts of things to actually having a true GIS system. And it allows us to allow our first responders to look on their phone and see at a live case where roads are closed when they're responding to medical incidents, whatever. And it's also something we're exploring, potentially opening up to the public as well. So our public knows where to avoid areas. And then Everbridge, which is our mass notification system, is in there. And the expense for that has been higher. Obviously, we've been using it. And it's, you know, the way it works is a subscription model, sort of similar to a cell service where well, I guess everybody went unlimited, but the old days of where you would buy so many credits and they wouldn't roll over the same style. So, so that's wrapped in there. The only other big changes is repairs for emergency equipment. The reason for that is we're supporting the CERT team they will be getting, as New Canaan EMS will be getting a new fly car, which is the paramedics response vehicle. The old vehicle they're using will be going to CERT to replace CERT's vehicle, which is truly at the end of its life. So that is to just make sure that it has the appropriate radios and equipment, again, for them to operate. The only other thing of note really here was voice and data is up substantially, only because there were no cell phones for the director and deputy director. So we are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's the cost there. The equipment emergency supports, again, CERT. So that is, you know, reflective vests, ANSI rated vests, things like that. Our computers, we have a number of computers in the emergency operations center that are at end of life. They're actually iPads. So I think anybody who's had an iPad knows there comes a point where you can no longer update them. And we are at that point. And also a thing called the UASI sustainment fee, which is a statewide regional radio system, which we contribute along with every other municipality who uses that backbone. And it is actually great. We're working with our first responder department heads and chiefs to really enhance our access to that as a backup to our own radio systems within town. While we did a tremendous, a couple of years ago, project to improve and modernize our communication system, things can still fail. And this UASI backbone, which we're trying to move to have as a backup plan for us, is totally separate from our own system, and therefore enables this redundancy. So, so in a nutshell, that is our operating side. I'll move to the capital. There's only 2 items in our capital, one of which is year 2 of a 5-year contract executed with Motorola, which is a hardware software replacement for our radio system infrastructure, the hardware and the software itself. As you may remember from last year when we first signed it, we were unable to get from Motorola the estimate as to what we would have to buy or replace in the next 5-year span. And this was what they offered as a service. So we actually just had our first software update, and we are in the process, I believe, of doing our first hardware update shortly. So also important because it's a digital system, and I hate to say hacking is very real, whether it's individuals or nation state. There's constant traffic from the FBI and the other groups like Region 1 DEMIS and the Connecticut Intelligence Task Force Center, that it's very important for us to make sure that we keep the latest version and have that security in our most important radio infrastructure. So that's that. The only other one is the incident command trailer. I don't know, Tucker, is there a plug or do you have it up? Oh, look at this. Thank you, Tucker. You're awesome. So our replacement incident command trailer. So the only other item on capital is this. The town has an incident command trailer. We'll go to slide 2. Thank you. Which was acquired in 2007 with grant funds. This is an on-site command post for town officials and first responders to coordinate emergency, disaster, and large event operations. It has been used during COVID as a command site, whether it was for Jen and her team, whether it was for the CERT team to be able to keep the test kits out of the cold, or as a rehab facility, because a lot of this was done during the winter. It also serves as an alternate emergency operations center for the police department. Heaven forbid, we're unable to access our emergency operations center because of a bomb scare, or if anyone remembers back, post 9/11, the white powder scares that made it so people couldn't enter those buildings. It serves as a mobile backbone with the communications infrastructure and phones that we need to be able to operate as a municipality to respond to disasters and emergencies. It also gets used at the 4th of July every year to run that very large event. It needs to be replaced because the roof is leaking, not repairable. It's currently exposing sensitive radios and telephones and electronic equipment to damage. We've put tarps over stuff as best we can, but there's only so long before the humidity will cause problems. Bodies rotting and rusting, and structural integrity is compromised. You go to the next slide. As you can see, there's an image of the door and frame rot. The next one is, you can see the actual leak in the roof. And the next is, you can see what has happened because of the water getting into there. The cabinets are sagging, failing, and that's where a lot of the communications infrastructure is. So the proposal is to replace this. The total cost is $150,000. We're benchmarking this with other towns as well as the trailer vendors that are out there. That is all inclusive. That is an aluminum trailer as opposed to the one that we have now, which is a laminate board, kind of like what you would see if you bought I don't want to say a cheap RV, but a tow behind RV, whereas a full aluminum trailer is something that will have a much longer shelf life for us. It would have basic generators, scene lighting, heat and AC, and then base station radios for the first responder incident commanders, police, fire, EMS, CERT, public works. And the idea is it has a very small, we're nothing fancy, a small conference room with chairs, so that the key players at incidents, whether it's the first selectman, the chiefs of the departments, and public works, whoever are mitigating an incident, have the ability to do it on site and or off site if we're unable to use the police department. Again, we're trying to keep it simple, because the simpler it is, the more likely it will work after being sitting in a parking lot for 3 or 4 weeks or maybe a month between last use. So we're not putting computers in there. Everyone brings their own laptop. Therefore, we ensure that everybody's software is updated, things like that, and I'll have a couple screens on it to make it work. But it's an incredibly important asset that the town has used, and it is due for replacement because it's truly compromising the equipment that's in there now.
Can you get one? And how
Well,
long will it take to get one?
You can get them. That in discussion with the trailer vendor, the lead time, because of aluminum, well, I guess like everything, but in aluminum in this case, probably 2 years before we would actually see it, which is all the more reason to start moving sooner than
We
later.
need to get one though. Do we need to put down a down? How does the process get
Yeah,
started?
what's
You
the-
would buy it tomorrow. How does it work?
So what we have formed a working group, which includes individuals from all the different groups, from police, fire, EMS. We've outlined our high level specifications or guidelines. Once we have our understanding of, once we have that document, we'll furnish it to several different manufacturers. There's AFC and others, and have them provide us proposals of what they're willing to offer. The intention here is that I don't want to say there are limited numbers of all aluminum trailer manufacturers. There's Featherlight, there's ATC, there's some others. But I know that some of them are just cost prohibitive. That like Featherlight, while they make amazing products, there's just no way it's not worth the amount of money to just have that logo on the side of the truck for us, unfortunately. So that if we get this, the next step is we have our initial requirements gathering. Our group will actually design a true specifications guideline and then move forward.
And what's the useful life?
Well, we're from the trailer manufacturers, they say you can get 15 to 20 years out of them. Now, I think one of the other things we would want to consider is putting it under a awning or a tent, or finding a better place for it to stay than behind the police department in the parking lot where it is now. But because we've got a 2 potentially year lead time before we ever see it, we have time to come back and make that request once we really know the dimensions of it and have a better working understanding of, especially with the police department, potential renovations and everything else, where it should fit, where it should live, because it does need to have power to maintain charge and for the equipment that's on it. So.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
well,
just trying to ask how
How
should
do
we
we
think of this for
finance
capital
it?
though?
Yeah.
Yeah, do we
Is
really
this
need it this
is this
year?
a down payment to get an order? At some point, you
Yeah,
run the
that's the
RFPs,
down
you get that
payment.
done, they
It's
come
2
back, you pick a
years.
winner. You need money, but you don't need
Right.
$150,000. You probably need 50 or 30 or something.
Yeah, I haven't gotten into the true nitty gritty, because I'm assuming each of these vendors are going to have different plays on how they're willing to, what they require for down and what their payment schedules are. I haven't gotten into that yet because we wanted to make sure that this was solvent, that we were moving forward, and also the same with designing the specifications for it, to make sure that we knew what we were working with before, because that dictates so much about what we're able to do.
I'm just trying to help you get going.
Yeah. What's your guess?
My
50,000.
guess is you need something
Yeah.
now, once you get the RFPs done, to
Yeah.
get rolling. I think this is a capital item for the next year,
next
not
year.
necessarily this year. This is a down, I think, what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Is it like when you guys get closer to knowing what the cost would be, would it be, this be a hard thing to just kind of come before this, do it as a one-off to us? I mean, I don't think anyone's gonna have a problem with
No problem,
doing this.
exactly.
So whether we actually have to put it
Yeah.
in the budget, I just don't know if the cash flow timing wise messes you up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from our standpoint, I'm not gonna, we defer to you all on, the best method to move forward. All I can say is there's a compelling need for it.
I think the message to you is go,
Yep.
and then
we
you
will-
come back to us when you've got the RFPs and you've picked a winner, and I think we'll figure it out then.
Yeah, it
That's-
could be
that's the right answer.
contingency, it could be.
We'll know
it's-
when you need the money.
Exactly.
You'll know and share with
I mean, the
us.
fire trucks take two years sometimes,
Yeah,
right? Two
easily.
budgets.
You budget for
Two,
over
yeah.
2 years.
For 18.
Yeah.
24 now. Just,
Yeah.
if I could jump in.
Yeah, by all means.
Looked at the, I'm involved in the regional hazmat team, and we're looking at a trailer for the team, and they're looking at about 10 months for construction for what we were looking at, which would be a little less.
Yeah, okay.
With the town. You're almost a year.
Yeah.
If you put an order for 2, will they speed it up? Just saying.
Always willing to look for synergies. It's cost
The word
effective.
to you is go.
Yep.
Come back to us with the winner out of the RFP process, whenever you're done with that.
Yep.
And then we'll take it from there, and you'll tell us at that point, the
Specifics of
manufacturer
timing.
wants to have a down payment to take an order.
100%.
That's what we need to know, and then we'll worry about the capital later when we know when it is.
Yeah, and let's make sure that, I can't remember, and then when we ever get going with police voting, that we make sure there's a spot for you.
Yes, I mean.
No, I mean, that's not a big deal. That's just like, if we're gonna go forward and we're gonna figure out the parking, let's make sure we have a spot. Because to help the useful life.
100%. And especially, if we're pragmatic about it, it can extend the lifetime of the vehicle as well. So. All right,
Now we're in trouble.
here we go.
I thought we were done.
I'm sorry. It's a fantastic idea, except for in order for the selectmen to approve a purchase, we have to have all the money in place.
That's right.
So we can't just have. it
In the
down
budget.
payment.
Unless you do $50,000 as your initial
Yeah.
deposit, in which case then we
We can't sign a contract.
No, he's right.
right.
yeah.
So I can't, you can't sign the contract because unless we have the money in place. So we would have to have, Russ would have to have the money in place. Whatever it is, you could go and get it and find out what it is and come back to you. But at that point in time,
I think
Special
that's
appropriation
the
at that
only thing we
point.
need. Let's do that.
yeah, because we would need, we would need it. We
That's
can't.
fine.
Unfortunately, this is the person.
What's the process, do you think, in terms of doing the RFPs? Is that a couple months?
Couple months, a bit.
Okay. Thanks, Tiger.
Yeah,
Maybe.
couple months. And we have a very good working understanding of what it is. We just need to put it in a true
All right.
process
Well, it's on
document. So.
you.
Are
we
you
just trying to
okay?
delay it a year.
No, well, maybe. I was just trying to, normally we just time it to whenever you need it.
Right.
And that's why I asked you how long will it take, and you said 2 years. Not really a February problem,
Right, but
but
we
it
would
but
be,
it will be, to Tiger's point.
to Tiger's point, we would
if
need to be in a
so.
position come, if we're February now, April-ish, May-ish, we would hypothetically have gone out.
Does it have to be identified as a line item in the budget specifically, $150,000? I mean, whatever the number is, actually.
You would need an appropriation
Yeah.
for it.
Special program.
Yeah, you would need it, you would need a line,
Right, which means it's gonna have to wait until we know what that number is.
unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
Which is a little different, right? Like when we do fire apparatus purchase, we have a rough estimate based on benchmarking, right? This is a little different.
It's okay. Okay. So let's do that. When
Okay.
you get your process done, come back and then we'll take care of it.
100%.
Let's do it that way.
Russ, are you okay for the next 2 years with the one you have?
We will hold it together with
No, I
duct tape
mean-
and Bondo as best we can.
It sounds pretty miserable. How long have we
Two
had? it?
tarps.
The problem is the leaking. And I've been working with Neil down at Highway, who's been wonderful in keeping that thing running. And it's just not worth cost wise, taking the roof off of it as a temporary measure to try or the patching that we've done and put in place is temporary at best. So look, I think the answer unfortunately is we will do our best to keep it running.
No,
It's all we can
that's
do.
Right, yeah.
Flex to it.
And in the meantime, again, ensure that our plans are salient enough that, if we can't get into PD, we have a backup plan as to how we would stand up an emergency operations center should the trailer not be operational during that time between build and purchase and build.
Should we put duct tape in the budget for you?
Flex tape, isn't that what it is?
You can be posting on Etsy or something.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. So we
You
will
got
go
it.
full
You
steam
come
ahead.
back to us.
Full steam ahead and
let's
we'll
do it
come
that
back
way.
to you.
Okay.
100%.
All right, perfect. Any other questions? Anybody?
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Chris.
Okay, we've got EMS, I think, Nancy, yes. Hello.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi.
I'm Nancy Upton, New Canaan EMS President, and with me is Alec Montgomery, our EMS Treasurer.
Thank you for coming.
Sure.
So did you want to go through what we typically do? You want to just walk through, nice to know, operate high level numbers, just, kind of operating your flat
Yeah.
year over year, just this overview like that. We've got the budget book where the ambulance corps is in there, so.
Right. So for next fiscal year, we're really trying to hold flat. The paramedic contract, which is the first line item, is for the paramedic who is hired from Norwalk Hospital, covering our headquarters 24/7. We are on a fixed year contract. We are still in that fixed year, so there's no change in that price. Okay. Going down to town contribution, that is your contribution to our operation that we pay the bills for, because there are so many vendors for the equipment, for the ambulance supplies, rig repairs, things like that. So we pay those bills, and that contribution we kept flat, just to be good citizens. And then the last item that is really our side of the equation is the information services, which is the service provided by an organization that the state of Connecticut requires. It's called CMed, Connecticut Med, and they are our dispatcher as well as a required tracking service for all ambulance transport activities in lower New Canaan, lower Fairfield County. So that's kind of a service, a contract that just goes up a little bit each year. It's a nonprofit, so I think it went up 3%. So essentially dispatch and state required oversee of ambulance activities. Okay. Everything else in that equation is not anything we control, but it supports our headquarters.
So a couple of questions. Did you get this past year, we did replace the paramedics SUV flight car.
It's coming this year.
We didn't get it.
So in the capital plan, you'll see the 65K,
Yep.
right?
Okay.
This Tiger is still here. Yeah, it's been acquired. It's being fitted out. It will probably go into service in a couple months.
Okay. And is there anything else you need? I mean, do you have, what is the town contribution at flat good enough? I mean, do you have?
We feel it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we get town residents who donate, and we use that for other activities, education, uniforms, food.
Right, food. Any questions?
Very simple.
How about a huge thank you?
How about
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Oh, you're so
Duh.
welcome. And just on the capital plan. So this year is the receiving of the fly car, which is every 5, 6, 7 years. But every 3 years, we replace one of our 3 ambulances. So you'll see going out every 3 years, there's an allocation for that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and we did one 2 years ago.
Isn't it?
Just 1 year.
Services.
That was
It was
351.
Probably did it 2
Yeah.
years ago to get a year last year. I got you.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the request will be next year for.
Well, it's as
Yeah.
posted,
That's right.
right? And yeah, and so they stay in service for 9 years,
Yeah.
which is as long as you want to go with an ambulance. You know, you want it trustworthy and
Mhm.
low cost maintenance.
So that's coming up for next fiscal year, 23, 24.
That's right. The fiscal year after the one we're
That's
built.
New ambulance.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's every 3 years we have one.
We see it there.
Yeah. So that's our expenses and our capital plan.
Could you just mention what it came up today in a meeting, when we loan an ambulance to Westport or something?
Yeah. So we have tried to put in place an agreement that is legally binding in some way for a liability, that when we are down an ambulance, we can borrow one from Westport and Westport can borrow one from us. We haven't actually done it. We were just trying to get all the legal stuff done.
And we're both insured by Kerma. So we
That's right.
discussed today that there really should be no issue with liability
Right,
because they
right.
insure both of us.
Yeah. Now, I will say in the past, there have been borrowing in the neighboring towns, but under this new contract, we have not executed a borrow.
Okay, do we have that with Darien?
No. What we have done, though, is for coverage, asked Darien to come with a crew and their own ambulance, not ours, to cover us while we have either a large event or a party where all our members
Right.
want to gather. And so you
And that
kind of
works.
do
It
that.
goes there
Yeah.
too.
So
Right.
it's their own ambulance, their own supplies. They just come to our patients, our residents.
Would you say the call or need for your services has increased, decreased, remained about flat?
It fluctuates so much. So this past year, even though it was COVID still, was higher than the year before. You know, it's just hard to gauge it, but I mean, we still see the typical number of car accidents, elderly people, either sick calls or falls. I would say the psych calls are increasing, sadly enough. It's still a small percentage of our calls, but we're seeing a lot more of mental health issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're going to.
I don't have any other questions. Anybody else? Anything capital wise or otherwise?
Great. Good. Well, thank you for your
Well,
support.
thank you. Well,
Thank you.
look,
Thank
to
you
and your
for
whole
all
team
you
for everything
do. Oh, God. Huge.
We love it. Thank you.
If you've never used them, you will, right? That's the old adage.
That's a positive thought. Okay.
Oh, they are. Oh, they're remarkable. I know.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You want to,
So this is,
You driving? Do I have to plug in or Zoom? 1 second, please. No. No, let me find Zoom. Shouldn't update it today.
is this the same one? I guess it is. Has to be,
I think so.
right? I mean, it's just not. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I see. Yeah, that was a tough one to find.
And then sign in.
Thank you.
And so you'll do join a meeting in here.
Thank you.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
820-4269-1601. Let's see if you're being asked in the back.
All right.
Yes.
Passcode.
Right?
442-699. Got your presentation up there ready to go?
We have it. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Yes. Yep.
Is it fun to have all the help outside?
I know. All right. All right. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Albie Bassett, the interim fire chief. Met a few of you on our committee's meeting. It should be good. All right, so our fire department's 2023 budget request. I believe I sent out to everyone the annual report that we put together as the fire department and the commission. So that highlighted a lot of our stuff going on over the last year. A couple highlights were 1,140 incidents that we responded to over the course of the year. And we estimated, I couldn't get a 100% accurate count, but we had over 3,000 community contacts that include public education, smoke detector installs, battery changes, and so on. And that's above and beyond the actual calls that we respond to. So those are a couple highlights Our 2022 accomplishments, our rescue truck, as was asked, we're at the 24th month. There were some supply chain issues and worker issues. We are going for final inspection on Tuesday, hopefully final inspection for the rescue truck, and hopefully it'll be in service. Our career assistant chief position, which was my position, that was funded last year. So that was a first time a paid assistant chief and a paid fire chief for working for Canaan. Maintained operations under the pandemic, as Russ talked about, in emergency management. We did fill a vacant fire inspector position at the end of this year. So helping us with our requirements to do all the inspections within town, both commercial and residential. And we continue to enhance the water supply throughout the town, both positive water supply, which are hydrants with Aquarian, and our cisterns and dry hydrants in the more rural areas of town. So that continues. And we continue that in our 2023 goals. So that's a big project for us, is continue to get water where we do not have it, because that's what puts fires out. We also are enhancing our proactive fire protection. So we're trying to get out to more than just the schools and provide, fire and life safety education at the department level and through the inspection division. Obviously, always improving our volunteer recruitment and retention. Continue to enhance our regional partnerships with other towns. We are a member of regional dispatch. We've been with the regional dispatch for a number of years now, and a member of the Fairfield County Hazmat, which is a 14-town mutual aid agreement. So we continue to work with those, and our primary mutual aid and automatic aid is with our neighboring towns. And we continue to look for grant opportunities. And we'll see one in capital, but since I've been here, I'm in my 6th month and haven't received anything yet, but got 2 grants written. One's got to be sent in by tomorrow. So I'm trying to fund some projects that'll benefit the town through other means. And continue in the performance measures, continuing to look at calls, but we're starting to look at property saved also. So that's keeping fires to a smaller area or not having fires started based on our public education. So we're trying to capture that number as we move forward, along with our inspections, pre-plans, and pub ed events. Our revenue, we don't really have revenue, but I just wanted to be open on it. We can charge for false alarms, but in the fire service, we're not a fan of that. We try to encourage repairing their alarm and educating them how to fix that, so we're not back multiple times in a short period of time, because people who don't need alarms tend to take alarms away. So we don't want to instill the fines that really isn't going to generate that much revenue. And then our plan reviews are within the building department, and blasting permits, which we just made a whole bunch of money on Canaan Parish, I think, for blasting permits over the last couple of weeks. So we do have some revenue this year. Moving into what our request is for this year, our total operating budget is $4,283,917. That's a 3.9% increase. We had some numbers issues in my previous meeting, but we've narrowed it down to 3.9, and it's a $159,000 increase over the FY 22 budget. My predecessor, Chief Hennessy, did break it down into discretionary, non-discretionary. Just to define discretionary, it's things like upgrades before they break. So when we start to see some age on equipment and we'd rather replace them prior to failing, those are types of things that are discretionary that we can push out. It really isn't a true definition, because if it's in the budget, we're really looking, we're going to need it when it breaks. It might not break this year, it might break next year. So those are really the only discretionary items that we have in there, but it's really just pushing it down for the next operating budget. And there's our graphic of the discretionary versus non-discretionary. And we also have most of our budget is personnel expenses. So just under $3 $1,900,000 is operating expenses versus our, personnel expenses versus our operating expenses of running the apparatus and so on. Our getting into the meat of the budget, what's driving our 4.3 million? It's our collective bargaining agreement for our full-time staff, which was for this year coming up, it's 2.5% was the agreed upon raise. So that's been reflected across all salary lines. So I'll get into the individual salary lines and overtime lines in a moment. Educational incentives were also increased in that bargaining agreement. So they went up a few dollars, and there's increased number of stipends that the members are being trained to and receiving the stipend for. So that was a large increase in the operating budget. And our service contracts, we are switching to a new records management system, which is about 3 to 4 times more than our current one we've been living with for 20 years. It's finally sunsetting, and the new ones are coming in about 3 to 4 times more. So that's one of the larger increases. And we also did basically zeroed out a line. We took out the outside contractors line. By definition of the budget, that's something that we're really not using. So we moved those few things into service contracts. So that's why that line went up as much as it did. So we transferred that into that service contract line. So the records management and the staffing software is a large driver on that line. So overtime, the minimum staffing in the career side of the fire department, we're driven, we have a 6-person shift, and that's minimum maximum. So that whenever a firefighter takes off for any reason, whether it's his compensation, it's compensated time, or if it is sick time or injury, they have to be backfilled. We maintain a 6-person minimum. The 6-person minimum comes from a lot of years of research, and New Canaan finally went to 6 firefighters about 15 years ago. And that's to meet all national fire protection standards of having a minimum level of firefighters, minimum number of firefighters on scene. It also is driven by OSHA. If we don't have the number of firefighters on scene, they're not supposed to enter a house to extinguish a fire until the rest of the members get there. And also a big driver in that is our insurance services organization, which sets the insurance rates for the town. For most residential, it's minimal, but for our commercial properties, it's a huge impact if our ISO rating, as it's called, starts to go up. We currently maintain a 4. A lot of it's to do with water supply, and the second would be the response times and having people on scene. So if that goes up, then that's going to be a cost to the residents and the business owners on the insurance side. So that's our minimum staffing. So when we look at our time off, the compensated time off, there's vacation holidays that they can take off, and they can bank a lot of them, but there is a number that they could take off every year, and there's a little bit of variable in there, but we have an average. Younger people don't usually take off a lot. As they start to gain seniority, they don't bank as many, and they start to use a lot more. So right now we have a very young department, and they're not using the vacation and holiday time as much. Sick and injury, it's been down. No major injuries in the fire department, whether it's on duty or off duty. And sick time, we've just really done well from COVID. So we had a rush at the end of the year, but the sick time has actually been down over the last year. So it went down a couple %, but it's still, it's recognizable that we decreased the sick time use. Callback is how we bring back firefighters in the event of a fire, certain occupancies in town, and an actual fire would get callback. So that's an overtime generator. Not as much. We actually lowered that line because it wasn't happening as much that the firefighters were actually being called back. So we're able to back that line off a little. Training, there's unfortunately with the rotating shift, they're not on every day. So we need to provide multiple training sessions or
if the training session is critical, EMS training, many of the mandatories that OSHA and, the ISO would want us to have, we're going to have those firefighters in for that training time. So that's another generated overtime expense. And then the last one would be salary overtimes, that's reasonably discretion. That's extra duty that they need to do. Sometimes that's compensated back. Sometimes that's a cost to the town based on the event, such as the fireworks. That would be a salaried overtime line item that we're paying for it out of our budget, and other projects that are going on that we need to have firefighters on overtime for. So those are our overtime lines, and most of the, I don't have the exact percentage, but those are backfill overtimes for every compensated time that they're taken off. So when we look at the numbers and these are based on 3-year averages from Chief Hennessy, and again, the asterisks here on the PowerPoint are the 3-year averages that they did increase by that number. Again, we're starting to use a little more vacation, so that went up, and then the holidays and the sick time and injury is going to be a variable. I'm hoping it's down, but that's again, a moving target based on what COVID does, and God forbid an injury.
Did you find during COVID that the vacation went way down? Like
Way down, and that's what's
nobody
hurt-
took it. Now
Actually,
they're
that's what-
taking it
thank
now,
you,
right?
Thank you. That's actually affecting our average because nobody was taking time off.
There's nowhere to
There's
go.
nowhere to go, and that is, and I thought it didn't have that much of a play in it, but it is it's going back to 2020, which it is, that nobody took time off in 2020 unless they had to use it or lose it, and it wasn't carried over. So there's very minimal vacation time in 20. So that did skew it a little bit.
How much is your carryover increase?
What's that?
How much is your carryover increased?
I honestly, I'm gonna have to go back and see what they can actually hold, but most of them will max it out. I'll have to check on that max.
I would think.
Yeah, it's all outlined in the contract, and but yeah,
worth
once it hits
looking at,
that, then they start using it.
So is the 3-year average, if it includes 20, is it understated, the vacation time? Right?
Yes,
So it could be higher.
it could be. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
If start using, yes.
Yeah, all right.
But we did have a couple of the senior members retired, so we did hire 3 firefighters in the last year, which they would tend not to use it. So that's
okay.
Yeah, they weren't counted in back in 20, so they were hired in 21. So that could have.
So your group, your force has changed.
Yep.
Yeah. Mhm.
Educational incentive, again, talked about that, and fuel and electricity went up. Salaries full-time, it seems a little weird. It's only going up $1,600, but that is with Chief Hennessy retiring, the assistant chief position not being funded. We asked for it for a half a year. By the time we get started on the process to fill that position, probably won't be, we didn't fund it until January. So that really decreased the full-time salary. And again, the 3 new people and the senior members that retired that were at top step. So that really drove that full-time salaries down. And we actually added the part-time inspector went up because we did add a part-time fire inspector. So there's the 31,000 that increased in part-time, which is needed to meet our inspection requirements in the fire marshal's office and building plan review. Just a quick slide on our historical budget, and very, slowly creeping up. Well, now, that's not slow.
No.
Okay. So
A couple questions on that.
go ahead.
Look, a couple of things. First of all, I think you were at 3.7 back. I'm just losing 2019. And you're talking about 4.2, up about $550,000 over 4 years. That's not bad. I mean, 4%-ish, a year overall with that. And a couple of things do jump out. One of them is injuries was 123 back in 19, and you have 90 this year. Thank God, right? I mean, that's a good one. Because that one's a variable you just don't control. There's nothing it is what it is. There were a couple though that went up a lot. I mean, the salary part-time, that's why I wanted to interrupt you for a quick sec.
Yep.
From 58 to 86 since 2019. salary, the vacation, we talked about, the sick was 169 and that's 222. That's a pretty big jump, but it's the education incentive was 0 back in 2019 and now it's 57. So I mean, maybe give a little color to those, but because if you look at it year to year, this is a tough budget to look at year to year. It really is. Fires and injuries and, a lot of things can go up and down. But you look at it over 4 or 5 years, a few things do jump out. I think you've done a nice job overall. It looks like your team.
Yeah, let me talk about educational incentive. I don't have 19s here. My spreadsheet only goes back to 21. Our educational incentive, make sure we're looking at the same line, was 34,000.
It was 0 and 19, 38 and 20, 34 and 21. So same line.
I'm going to defer to my commission if he recalls why that would have been 0 and 19, unless it was new in the contract. And I'd have to.
21 and I have 34.
Yeah,
34 is right for 21. It was a little higher, 38 and 20, and then it was 0 and 19.
I'll have to do a little research to see if that was a
What's
contract
driving
addition.
that up? That's a lot. I mean, as a percentage, go from 34 to 57, right? 43%. What's it going to be next year?
That's
Well, the request for this year is driven by the contracts.
this year was a contract increase. So each educational stipend went up $50 for for each firefighter.
Okay.
So that includes any certification class.
So it'll be flat next year, probably.
I'm not going to say that because what'll happen is it won't be flat because the newer firefighters are going to start taking classes.
Okay.
So the average class is probably two per new firefighter a year. And we got the mid ones that are probably only taking 1 a year. So that could increase, 2,500, 3,000 increase because of the new certification. So that the stipend won't increase, but as I decide to take the next class, that's an additional $200 per firefighter.
Okay. I got you.
So the new firefighters tend to take a lot of education. We don't want to defer them on that, and stop them. And they're doing a good job of, preparing themselves for an emergency.
It's about
And-
1.5% of the total. It's not a big
Yeah.
number, right?
But that's where it's coming
important.
from. And I don't know. I don't have the answer for 19. I'd have to go back to their contract prior to this one to see what, if they did not get a stipend in 19.
What are your continuing ed obligations? I mean, what are the requirements? I mean, do you have to do so many hours a year, which is what drives this education?
No, the education incentives is just their choice to take those classes.
Okay, so
The
this is not
required class,
requirement-
I'm sorry.
yeah, okay, required classes.
The required classes are not included in the educational incentive. If they're required to have it for their job, they don't get paid for it. So every firefighter is required to have fire 1 and fire 2 and pump operator to work. And they all get that, and there's no incentive, there's no stipend for that. The officers need instructor and officer 1, and there's no, once they get promoted, there's no stipend for that.
Okay, so they do that on their time.
Correct. If they're trying to get promoted, they'll take instructor and officer 1. So I'm paying a firefighter to have those 2 certifications. If they get promoted, then the stipend goes away. They get the promotional raise. But
But do you have any continuing ed that you have to do either for federal or state
yes.
mandated? Okay.
Yes, so those are all built, like, that was the training overtime. So some training we can do on shift, which we do a lot of the company level things. Like if anyone drove by Country Club today, they were doing just basic firefighting skills, stretching hose lines, searching, and that counts toward the ISO credits. We need 200 hours a year for ISO for training, company level training. So that get counted for that. So there's no cost today for that training. EMS training's happening once a month right now. And because we have so many people, it's cheaper to pay the overtime than to contract the class for all 4 shifts 4 times. So, and multiple times. So each training you got to look at. I can bring somebody in for all 4 shifts. We're doing bloodborne. They're coming in for free for every shift, no cost. EMT, which is a requirement, they have to recertify every 2 years. There's a cost, and we have to look at that to see, is it better for me to bring the firefighters in, or is it better for me to contract multiple classes to do it? So sometimes the classes are cheaper than the overtime. So each one gets looked at independently. But there's training every day. They have to meet 200 hours of training to get full credit on ISO.
Okay.
Okay, no, that's
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you for that. You're doing 3 incidents a day. You didn't really mention that, but that's and up, I think,
That's
a little bit more, maybe
enough.
3 and a
Yeah,
half.
it's roughly, just over average of 3 incidents a day. I want incidents to go down. I'll be up.
Right.
If we can do half the number of incidents and actually get out more and be proactive, that's the wave of the fire service right now. That's really what, I don't want fires to start. I don't want people to lose any property. It's just like same thing with EMS. If we're going to the doctor to keep healthy and I don't need to call an ambulance, that's what we want. And that's really what the fire service needs to get to. It's a culture change, but it's the best for the community.
So I live in a condominium with 26 units and it's Park Mead condominiums, and we had a big fire and you guys were there really fast. And
That was my first one.
You guys saved probably 25 units from property loss. So that was great. You guys were super fast and I appreciate that.
You are welcome. And that was my first fire since I was hired. And I don't want to say it was an easy one, but I'm glad I started with that one.
Big.
not the
It was
8,000
big. There was
square foot
shame.
house.
The flames were like over the roof line.
Oh, yeah. From the back, right?
Yeah.
See? Yep. So,
So,
you have
Todd, if
something?
I could go back to your question about 2019 having zero.
Yes, sir.
in the education incentive line. Well, Warner, who saves everything. We had nothing budgeted or actually show up in that line that year. However, in 2018, that number was 35,100. There's, for some reason or another, and we'll have to check with budget, there's nothing in the 2019.
Yeah, it's weird. Okay,
Then the following year, 2020 was 38,100.
right, right.
Okay, and on and on and
Yeah,
on.
right,
So
right.
there's
That's odd.
what didn't go from zero.
Right. Didn't go down to 0 from
Yeah.
34, then up to 30. Yeah, so
And-
that
and
is
my-
weird. Okay.
And given
Something's
that
missing.
these, we'll talk with the people in budget, but
Okay.
they provide
Okay.
us with these numbers. My
It's okay.
guess is it was accounted for in some other line.
And I think you explained it, and my guess is I've been doing it for a long time. It's up now because of how you just described it with the training. So I get it. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on operating? Dispatch, there's a couple big line items that stayed flat. Dispatch is one of them, actually going to the selectmen's meeting on Tuesday to approve that payment to our regional dispatch center, which is Westport, and they're upgrading with Fairfield right now. So they're moving together in Sacred Heart University. But it did stay flat. But I think that was our only other large, and the apparatus repair stayed flat also, which was reasonably flat for the major apparatus repairs and services. All right. No questions on operating. We'll just look at capital. So our capital request for 22, a lot of these are reoccurring. Our SCBA, our breathing apparatus, that again is a governed product that only lasts 15 years. New Canaan has done a good job of spreading it out over the 15 years. All of them don't come due at once. So we do have a request for 15,000 for cylinder repairs, which will be about a dozen air cylinders to keep us operational with the number that we have. So we have 75 cylinders right now, and throughout the 15 years, they're pretty well evenly spaced across that lifespan. The next one down is tri-band radios, one being more regional, and one of the partnerships, we're trying to be more regional partnership wise. We can't talk to anybody when we go to their towns, which is a huge safety issue for the firefighters. The officer, the person in charge of the apparatus, we can talk to them on the mobile radio, and they have one tri-band radio that they can talk to them when they come off the apparatus. But our firefighters that are going into the building do not have communications with the incident commander outside. So that is one, and this is because this is kind of a new issue because everyone changed radio frequencies. Stanford went to the state system, and I know Assistant Chief Kimes was talking about, radio frequencies earlier. The state system, it's like a 700 band. Westport's on the 700 band now. Norwalk's going to the 700 band. Wilton, we didn't have great communications with already, but they're talking about going to the state system also. So we really have no communications with any of our primary mutual aid partners. They, once they go in the building, if they try to call for help, anything major's going on, there's nobody outside that hears them until I get there, or our Assistant Chief Kimes gets there, and could be that set of ears next to the Wilton Incident Commander or the Norwalk Incident Commander. So that's kind of what I pushed this one up, and what it didn't show before, and what myself and Josh worked on. I put a grant in for this. It's $313,000. It's all the way right on the capital plan. So this was a assistance to firefighters grant. So it came out to $313,000 because trying to make it work and get it, I had to put a couple other things in the grant. If we get awarded the grant, we're gonna be 10% of the grant. So it'd be 30,000, which our approach would be to fund 15,000 for 23 and then another 15 in 24 if we get awarded the grant.
The column header on your slide says
Mhm.
23, 24. That should be 22, 23 on the capital request slide.
For yep, with the highlighted 15.5.
Yeah, the 15 and the 141, those
Yes.
two columns should be 22, 23.
Yeah, do you mean that?
This is where Josh and I were talking about how to present this. The 15 is, we get that grant, we're definitely going to owe 10% of the federal monies. So if they give us that whole grant, we have to do exactly what the grant, which I asked for, which would end up being $30,000 over 2-year period because of the performance period of the grant. Josh and I wanted to present that in case I don't get the grant, this was the whole amount. And then I'm going to go in and make that ask a lot smaller than 300,000. I don't need everything that I asked from the federal government, but I do need the tri-band radios, which in estimate is probably, originally I was looking at 72,000 to equip the tri-band radios. So this is how we came up with the best way to present it, ask for the 15 in the 2 years to cover the 30,000, and keeping our fingers crossed that we get the grant, which we did a pretty good ask for it and a good example of why we need it. So
Timing on that? When will you know?
they won't start awards until the end of next month.
Oh, soon.
Our performance period will be for the entire year. So we'll have some until mid 23 for the performance period.
I'm sorry, what does the performance period mean? What does that mean?
That's when we have to finish the project. So we have to start and finish the project within the performance period of the federal.
Of getting the tri-band.
Yes.
rated. And how many radios is that? Or is it a whole system? How does it
Well,
work?
I would like minimum of 4 for that apparatus that does go out of town. This grant asks for 12. So I asked for 12 radios in the grant so I can equip all the on-duty staff with a radio, myself, assistant chief. And we can have the radios on the other apparatus that career people would come back and staff. So
those are radios that not only do you guys talk to each other, but you can talk to other towns.
Correct.
And we cannot now, correct?
correct. Those radios will be able to, each firefighter would be able to change channels and talk to the Wilton Incident Commander, which right now we only could do that from the mobile, and the officer on the apparatus can have a portable that does that, which is not a good portable to take into a fire.
Right.
And those are 10 or 11 years old. Go ahead,
If I
Bruce.
may, this also fits well within what we were talking about earlier with emergency management. Having the UASC bands, which you need the tri-bands to be able to do as a backup network for us as a town. We're trying to push all the agencies. This future proofs and gets them capable of doing that. Additionally, later on down the road, 5 years, 6 years, where we're in the position, again, our contract with Motorola ends with the overall infrastructure. We're starting the discussions now. Does it make sense for us to join the state backbone? Is there cost savings with that? And to do that again would require this kind of technology. So
Right. If you don't get,
Have we gotten this grant before? I don't recall.
The chief, I looked back in all the grant history, we did receive the grant for the mobile radios,
We did.
and it's over the ask period, so it's over 10 years, which made it a little more lucrative for us to ask for it this time. So I think it was in 2009. So
So is it a reach? I mean,
I don't, you never know with the government.
No, you don't.
Radios
No,
are a
you
high
really-
priority. I
yeah,
think,
they
I
should
don't,
be.
I hate to say it, but the reach is, trying to, the money is asking, where we were, hey, this is why we're so deficient. And it's just, trying to fund everything else. All our other capital projects is what I sold in the grant. That was, the radios are easy. It's just trying to show the need for the
and what's the total state grants on this? What's the,
total ask was 313.
not ours, but the total amount dispersed?
Geez, was it? I forgot. I gotta look at 18 million.
Was it
Yeah.
that much? Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of money there. This is,
Okay.
and this
Then
is a good, they
hopefully
put
maybe-
extra in this year, so that's why I'm
Good.
keeping my fingers crossed this year because
That's.
What's plan B? Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Well, how does, what adds up to the 313? Coming up with 313?
across the radio tri-band line.
Yeah.
I believe is it just the 141? No, it's, So his lines are. Go ahead, Josh. His columns are a little misleading. The headers are also a little off. It's 156.78 for 2 years. This FY '23 and also FY '24, which totaled the 313. And over both of those years, it's the 15.5 tax supported and 141 from the grants.
So if we get the grant, we will be paying 30,000 more or less over 2 years, right? And if we don't get the grant, we'll rethink what we're doing
That was my
with
question.
radios.
What's plan B? If we don't get the grant.
If we rethink the grant, I would like the 4 tri-band radios as a minimum, just to get the firefighters into other towns safely. That when other towns come to us, they all have the radios. They could talk to us with no problem. That's not an issue. All our firefighters are radio equipped. Every volunteer has a radio, so we're very good in town. It's because we're playing in the regional game. We're asking for people to come in. They ask us to go out, and that's where the fear is when they run into Wilton and everywhere else. So 4 radios minimum would be my ask.
And the cost of 4 radios minimum, because this is
Cost
12.
of 4
correct?
radios is going to be, it's just about $36,000 for the.
You need to think about that. So when you come back to us,
Yes.
safety is always in the budget.
Mhm.
If it's 6, it's 6. Okay. Don't do the minimum just because it saves the town $12,000 or $14,000. So just let's just assume we're gonna have plan A, but when plan B comes back, remind us that we said, the safety is always in the budget.
Okay. Make a note of that. So, yes, but that's,
You're good on
no,
that.
it's,
One thing that, and this may not be the right time for the conversation, but technology and expensive communications for people in general is going down. It's like, used to be really expensive, it's now cheap. So at some point, I would like to understand why in this safety, the uniformed world, the costs keep going up.
I
And
need
it
to
could
get
be-
you on NFPA committee and ask that same question.
But no, but it's almost like,
I know.
because safety is important.
Isn't it one
the
word?
Providers up the
Motorola?
price.
Yeah, they
So-
have a monopoly.
Well, that's it. There you go.
No, we know the answer.
First selectman knows.
We know that last year. So they have a monopoly. I mean,
So-
that's-
I thought you said it was proprietary technology
It,
in the committee when we talked about it.
the-
Motorola has a lock on it.
But
There
do
i-
people just
there
pick up
is-
their cell phones and call somebody on their cell phone if they get stuck? I'm serious.
Yeah, not
would-
that, not that easy with our stuff that, these radios that we're looking at, are
They're
very
remarkable.
heat sensitive.
Yeah.
And crash resistant. So there's a lot of,
You know, to press a button.
built into that, they gotta handle them with gloves. So the radio itself is good, but it's really the technology drive behind it. And I think the P25, correct me if I'm wrong, Russ, is proprietary with Motorola, right?
Correct.
Yes.
And you have an
Yes.
exceptionally limited number of players in the field who make equipment set to a spec by NFPA. And a number of the things that are in spec make sense. There's a thing intrinsically safe. If you think we work in potentially gas-filled atmospheres, propane or whatever else, you use a cell phone, you could potentially cause a spark and ignite it, whereas these radios do not do that.
Mhm.
So there is certain robustness that's required in the
Right.
design, but it is mostly, there are very limited players, AKA Motorola in the game.
Yeah, and they can change the parameters every couple of years and boom, you gotta buy them.
Do these, I mean, the good thing, I mean, even our radios now, the ones that we carry every day are, 15+ year radios. So 15 to 20 years life expectancy. So, we got, those are good and we don't need more than a single band in for the everyday firefighter in town, the volunteers coming in. Be a nice to have, but to be honest, it's not needed for every firefighter in town. It's when they go out. So. Any other items you want to cover? I mean, the rest of it's pretty. Yeah, I mean, the rest are just PPE, and I'm just gonna throw our PPE manufacturers under the bus with a 23% increase. So that's why we're carrying that through the what they're giving us through the 5-year plan. And the big items, in that 5-year plan, talking about fire trucks, we're 20 or 25 years, and you can see 2025 is our next ask for a fire apparatus, but that'll also be a writing. I'll do some grant writing for that. And then in 27, our air packs, our SCBA, our breathing apparatus will be up for renewal. They'll be at 20 years. So that's another good target for grant money because we're over there, what they estimate as a life expectancy of it. So those are 2 targets for grants in the next 5 years. So hopefully it's only 10%.
If you put the order in for the pumper in 2025, when does it actually get delivered then?
If we actually put the money in 2025 for that July, it would get delivered probably 18 months from that date. But if we can start starting the specs and getting that spec together, which I plan on doing once the rescue's done, is really getting an outline for replacing engine 2, which is at 30 years. Replacing that engine, starting a committee now, getting what we need, where are we going with it? That way it really limits the front end time that we're doing. And then once the money's allocated, then we could go for that contract at that point. But it is an 18-month process and probably pushing 2 years right now. Hopefully that'll get fixed. So
Given
Okay.
that the grants are uncertain, is Todd, what you were saying, were you recommending that we put in a request for the radios, 6 of the radios this year as a placeholder?
He's gonna know in a month.
Oh, okay.
That's why I was saying, if you're gonna know in a month, that's good enough.
Oh, fine.
I would just go with your numbers for the budget that we send to
Okay.
town council. But we need to know, by the way, maybe during their meetings or certainly in April, you may know whether we got it or not. And if we didn't get it, I think don't cut it to the minimum. I appreciate.
Put half
your
of them in or
conscientiousness
something like
there,
that.
But you'll put a number in there that makes sense and we'll talk about that. I think we have to be ready for a plan B. though.
Yep.
all right. That's what I needed to cover
great.
unless any other questions?
Good.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great presentation. Okay, John?
You need that? Oh.
Tiger.
You all paper? Go.
Just want you to know, Michael Chen has a question on the pickleball courts. He hasn't asked it yet. I'm just telling you, it's coming.
I saw an email today about that.
There you go, there you go.
Yeah, I got a question about the pickleball courts.
I was only kind of kidding.
Good evening. So what you have in front of you is a very comprehensive budget that Steve Benko put together. Okay, going through that, we did make a few little tweaks here and there. But very simply, the whole staff has done a great job getting me up to speed on the budget and what's included where and stuff like that. The good news is recreation is back. People want to be outside. They want to be anything from walking on the trails to attending events and everything else. So it's great. Most of our changes that we made are due to 3 things: COVID and how that's affected programs. Minimum wage has gone up and also the benefits, Social Security and stuff like that. We did make some changes though. And Bill's going to go through a little presentation. You have that, Tucker? I'm sorry. I sent it to. No, I don't have it. I sent it to Pam, so I thought she'd have it. Okay.
It's on tablets, yes.
It is on the tablet.
It's on the tablets. yeah.
Which, what, the,
Do you have it in your head?
I have it in my head.
Fantastic.
That's good. So Bill's going to go through a little presentation and when we hit to a few spots like Lapham. Okay, and also the pool, both Aggie and Steve are going to talk there and I'll be glad to answer any specific questions. Go, Bill.
Pull it up.
You probably can start.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
catch
just
up.
start and we'll catch up.
Very good. Hello, everybody. Bill Cap, Assistant Director. This year, along with Steve Benko and Steve Dayton and Aggie Aspinwall, I think we had a bounce back year along with our support staff. I really thought it was a fantastic year. We bounced back with tremendous interest. And as John mentioned earlier, it was a result of people getting outside and beating the pandemic. And that's exactly in our ballpark. It's exactly where we want them to go. I did put a presentation together for you. As we emerged ourselves out of the pandemic, we saw a lot of trends and the results are a rediscovery of recreation and leisure activities in our beautiful parks. Food trucks became an alternative now than going to the restaurants. Our senior citizens are back in the Lapham Center, which is great. And boy, was there a push on racket sports this year. Oh, it was huge. The work from home and childcare was a big necessity. But as we move forward in a 2-year comparison last year, were remarkable increases. Youth and adult tennis instruction was up 144%. That's startling. Soccer enrollment, which is normally flat, was up 50%. Day camps were up 53, swim lessons 50. So you get the picture that people came running to us for something to do in this terrible pandemic. I threw some charts up here next, and this next one was for the facility permits and usage at the tennis courts, where our pass sales for in the last 3 years, but last year alone was huge, booming up. Adult passes up 398%. And we thank a lot of that for John and Tiger too. We got those courts open a lot earlier this year and it really paid dividends with the public. They wanted to play on those courts and they did. So then you look at the chart to the right and it's just our enrollment in our program, our tennis program instruction going through the roof. And I think it's going to continue to because we've got some great vendors there and the people really like working with them. The next page, I just threw up a chart on our Waveney pool. Both our past sales were up and our attendance over a 3-year comparison is jumping back. I think that was another boom year for the Waveney pool.
Is that a record?
It's not a record, as you can see.
Oh, annual attendance. I was looking at the past sales over there, but yes.
Yeah, but we're getting back there.
Did in 20, it was shorter period of time was open, right? So.
We had a shorter, later opening.
And for 21, it was at the,
We had
I
a
can't remember.
we had a regular Memorial Day weekend opening and in 20, we opened later because of the pandemic.
Oh,
was
no, I
hit.
know, yeah.
And we also didn't sell
external passes, yeah.
non-resident passes. So
it did rain last year.
Yeah,
Year
it rained,
long.
particularly on the holidays.
Right,
Fourth of July
right.
was true. True, but with the passes a record? That was a record, right? The number of passes.
if it wasn't a record, I have it here somewhere. It was darn close to it. I'll tell you that. And that makes us very happy. The next slide is really what we came to talk about, and that's presenting our budget. And I will just brief here. With civic activities, that's flat for this next year. That's typically our support for our special events in town, the Memorial Day Parade, the Porta Johns for the Family Fourth, the outdoor concerts and light towers. It's an account that we use to help everyone in town. When it comes to administration, there of course is going to be, and across the board here with each division, there's this minimum wage increase coming July 1 that goes from $13 to $14 an hour. And that is going to affect all of our part-time salary accounts. And you'll see increases there. But other than that, with administration, it's just utilities. And additionally, one large line item increase for other classes and programs, and let me explain that one in depth. There are three reasons why we need some help here. One was because we left too many people on waiting lists this year. We didn't have the funds to open an additional class. And we want to be able to do that this next year. Second was flexibility. We need to have the option to offer new programs as they come to us. And the pickleball is the prime example. We built the courts. Now we got to worry about putting clinics and instruction in there, but we're a little short on money. So we're hoping that this account will help us with that as we get into next year. And the third was the pandemic scare. It chased away our teachers and it forced us to have to go after turning to independent contractors. And these are people who have businesses providing the services we want, and they're typically a little more expensive. And that's what this account here, other classes and programs, supports these services.
But I mean, the key point here is those classes and services more than pay for themselves. So they just want to have the money to be able to say, we want to do another clinic and maybe we pay $300 for an instructor, but we bring 3,000 in. So none of this nets out revenues. So I think it's terrific they do that. And if they're going to spend it, it's going to bring more money in.
And if for some reason everything falls apart.
You won't spend.
And nobody wants to use course, take classes or whatever,
It
we're
just
not going
comes
to spend the
back.
money.
We won't
That's
spend it.
right.
You know,
There's no
We've talked about
loss.
this
Yeah,
in prior
there's no-
years. It
Right.
gives you the ability to expand. without
Exactly.
having to Come back.
Exactly.
And that's what we didn't have this year, so thank you. The next section, Waveney House, that is just, look, our rentals are coming back after been down for 2 years, almost had none. Our part-time salaries and overtime reflect the increase in the budgets for that division. Paddle tennis, again, the minimum wage increase, the part-time salaries. We do have some monies in there to replace some screens and resurface one of the courts. That would be in the maintenance part of it. The park buildings, well, that's just a simple increase for refuse service for Waveney House. As we start to get our events back, and we're going to need to have those dumpsters dumped a lot more. Utilities, fuel oil, propane and electricity, big numbers coming back at us because of our increased use of Waveney House. And skipping one, the Kiwanis Park, that just there is part-time salaries again with a minimum wage. The Lapham Center, I'll let Aggie talk about this in a second. Aggie will tell you our classes are returning. Our seniors are coming back. They're excited to be there, and we are just building back up our part-time salaries account and Social Security for these workers for us. All told, across all 7 budget divisions, it's a 10.8% increase, $216,613. Aggie, you wanted to talk a little bit about Lapham Center?
Before you do that, but there's a number that goes into all the revenues that come in. I mean, there's a net out number.
There's the other side of the equation.
Yeah, because we bring in, so if we're spending, what is it, 2.2 million, right? Between the classes, the rentals, I mean, there is an offset to that. So it's not like it's just.
Yeah.
a complete expense. Thank you.
1,050,000,
That's the.
All right.
roughly.
Yes, about 40%,
Yes.
right?
And what's that up in this model?
It's gone, yes, it's gone up. The main driver, the other classics and programs went up $80,000. So we're projecting.
So you're up 8% on the million. Ish.
That takes the 10% takes into consideration the offset on the revenues.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
I know we didn't do our fee review in January but we're going to do it next Tuesday.
Right.
So what we may be looking at.
We looked at the fees and very simply, at this point in time, I can tell you, I'm not ready to make any drastic changes. I feel we need more time. So what we'd like to do is basically the fees are going to stay flat.
Except for Waveney House, which hasn't been increased since 2017.
That's fine. And then we feel that we're going to, as we look into it, we might come back with another fee addition or a change for halfway through the year to change the different seasons. That's all.
Okay.
I'm not comfortable making huge changes on there without really knowing yet.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Before you get to pickle.
No, I'm not talking about pickle. I'm talking about revenue.
Just on the rest, so I just want to make sure I'm clear. What you have in here is no increase, and you're gonna take a look at some things, and you're gonna take a look at Waveney.
Right.
So Josh, that's just probably a very small change that could come in on the revenue side. Just have that on our long list of little tweaks. Okay, yeah. Okay. All right, Michael.
Yeah, sorry. So my question is, I'm just trying to understand revenue. What was our revenue in our this year versus what is our projected revenue growth next year?
The projected revenue group in 22 is 946,340. In 23, we're projecting 1,048,500.
Okay, so that, and these budget numbers are net against the revenue, you're saying, correct?
These expenses
No,
are,
these
how could they be net?
I think they're
No,
gross.
They're not. So
Yeah,
these are the
yeah.
irregular, your expenses, and
Yep.
down here somewhere should be $1 million of revenue.
Yes.
And then we
That's a
can have
separate,
net.
separate thing.
Yeah, so these are gross expenses.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, so the 10.8% growth, if you take into consideration the growth in revenue, your net expenses is not growing 10.8%. It's something less than that.
Correct.
Probably
Yes.
closer
Yeah.
to 6.5.
Yes.
Like that, 7.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all. I'm just trying to add on to Amy's point. Okay, thank you.
980 to 1048, is that it?
946,
946.
340 to 1048, 500.
And Mike Chen, are you still on, Bill Cap? We're not charging a fee for pickleball.
Well, I think you actually should. There's gonna be so much demand. I actually would think we can make a lot of money charging for pickleball.
We want to get everybody hooked, even more
There
than
you
they
go.
are now.
Yep.
And then we're going to charge them.
Got it.
Are we talking about lights, Tiger, for pickleball too? Just helping you out, Michael. Okay.
Wouldn't that cover it?
Me today
You
about
charge?
He's annoying.
Right, and he called, so it's all good.
You know, one other thing on fees, the pool is an enterprise fund.
Mhm.
And the pool bonds mature this year.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's $200,000 a year of no more bond expense.
Right.
Expense
We-
goes down.
You think we should start a maintenance fund?
Yes.
Or
You have a
perhaps
20
roll the fees back because the fees were established in order to cover the bonds.
Right.
Oh.
We feel strongly that we don't want to change the fees to the pool because we have a 20-year-old pool. And there's going to
agree.
be some major things to do. And if we have the money there, similar to the sewer plant,
Well, we already have a maintenance fund of what? What's the maintenance fund at? There's a maintenance fund.
there's the contingency fund is the only money that I know of that we have at 100 and almost 150,000, which we're going to ask you to
Well, we did the liner 3 years ago.
2 years ago. do.
I would have thought that sinking fund was a little bigger than that.
You know, I thought it's hundreds of thousands of
Looking
dollars.
at an operating
There
budget,
is.
so I'm not 100.
Yeah,
I don't
okay.
know.
No, it is.
Yeah, anyway, worth knowing for
But
sure.
it's-
Understand
but
your
it's an
point.
enterprise fund. It
It's an
was
enterprise fund.
designed, it was designed to
Right.
cover.
Trying to
That's
think
right.
about treating it like the
Yeah.
wastewater plant whereby.
Yep.
we actually put
There is-
monies aside.
But there is a fund there.
We'll have to-
But that's
Ma-
good
maintenance
because
fund.
there's good, but there's gonna be expenses. I think it just like
Well,
sewer
but we did the
system.
liner, so
There's going to be some other big expenses coming down.
20-year-old pool, we got
You know.
50 years out of the country club's pool. So
Well, look at, there's no barrier. I mean, the price points is not a barrier for people on
It
these.
has not stopped. Has
Okay,
not
so
stopped
I,
anybody.
it's not, and if anyone has a financial difficulty, we always will be there. So it seems to me, I would love it to be like the sewer fund where you don't have to think about it when you have to spend $750,000.
Could you look into that one, Ann, for us for our Tuesday, the first meeting, which I can't even wait to get to. What is that fund?
I know the pool fund balance is at around $1 million.
That's what I thought. Yeah, okay, I think that's what it is.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
So we got a big fund.
And what's our out of town allowance on?
100
They pay
passes
more.
at $1,250 a
we took them
family.
down.
We took them down
Yeah.
from the 1,250 or?
No, they're at
They're
1,250.
at 1,250.
Well, no, we took the number down because
Yes.
the residents wanted it,
Yeah, more residents.
but they pay more.
Yep.
Could we also get an estimate as to what the next major investment in the pool is?
I'm meeting with the pool company next week. Yeah, this is one of those things that, Steve had.
Yeah, you should
And-
know for sure what we've got in the fund. It's,
Yeah.
it's a real money. It's a real amount of money.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's in the CAFR.
Yes, sir.
point of interest. So the revenues are going up about the same percentage, 10%. So your net.
Revenues are up 80,
10%.
expense up 10, but close, but yep.
No, the net is still 10%, 10.8. So the gross is 10.8, revenues are going up 10.8. And so your net is still 10.8.
Is revenue,
Now,
I thought it was at
the
90,000.
delta is only 115,000 as opposed to.
It's a 200, that's right.
216.
Yeah, okay.
An $80,000 increase in the revenue.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's 100 anyway.
It's 102 is the revenue.
No, you told us it was
versus,
946 to 1048.
Yeah, okay.
946, 340 to 1048, 500. Yep.
Okay, that's, yeah, it's not 80.
It's up 102, 160.
Yeah, I thought someone I heard 80. It's not. It's 100.
80 is the big driver. There's one that's going down. Summer camps is going down a little bit, just even though we had more enrollment, the camps are shorter, so there's a little less fee there. But we also paddle went up. The revenues estimate on there is up 26,000.
The camps are shorter in number
Time.
of weeks or time of the day.
Time of day, number
Oh, is
time.
that right? Why did we do that?
It was a COVID correction for us
Okay.
during the pandemic to minimize and the cohorts of the students and
Alright.
all the space that we had inside Waveney House to be able to do that. We shrunk the camp down to a more workable size to, to meet the CDC requirements. And in addition, we cut out pretty much a lot of the afternoon, which was swimming. And we just kept it the same as a 9 to 1:15. Now, this number is coming back, but our revenues just came down a little bit as a result of us not doing the full 90 children and doing just 60 or 40.
But we are allowed to do that now?
Yes,
or
we
have-
can.
But
March
does that
1st.
include the Kiwanis? I mean, was that all reduced or?
So you didn't go to Kiwanis last year, right?
We didn't go to
So that
Kiwanis,
was
no.
why it shortened up, right?
But March 1st, the CDC says that in the campground environment, that masks are no longer mandated. So that's a next step to normality for us. And I think we'll get, have a chance to expand our camps next year and bring them right back to where they were a couple of years ago.
I hope so.
But you're not increasing it this summer.
And speaking of camps, the Kiwanis deal perhaps needs to be adjusted because we were nice to them over the COVID period, so.
As far as the YMCA.
YMCA, yeah, YMCA lease.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
And then the thought was that the YMCA is still coming back
Yeah.
and that perhaps it's next year is a
Yeah.
fairer time to do it.
Mhm.
But I think, John, what is the increase, would you remind me, of the number to run programs, because I think that has a multiplier on it. So.
Yes.
So just.
The increase is 159,750 that we're looking for.
Right, but you're gonna get a multiplier on that back more, probably 2 or 3 times.
Yep.
No,
Okay.
we're looking at 80.
80, okay.
Of that 160, we'll get about 80 back.
Okay, about half it. Okay, yeah.
The ratio stays the same, it's about 50%.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Yeah.
if you look at the way that the whole program runs, it's still about 50%.
Okay.
back.
One of the biggest complaints was not being able to run programs. And we hate to say, we
Yeah,
can't do it,
sure.
we don't have the money.
But the swimming wouldn't have been affected, right?
Just when you don't have the money to
Outside.
run the programs,
Oh,
you
no,
don't have the
I
money to
get
hire
that,
the
but,
instructors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But things like your clinics, when you do a clinic we don't do pickleball yet, but Michael's gonna run it, so he'll donate his time. But-
At night.
Right? At night with Tiger's lights.
It's the offset to the fee to do pay.
But I know the people who play the paddle, like really want more clinics, and those you definitely make money on,
Exactly.
right? That's
you
good.
can't.
And
That's a
everyone's excited,
win-win.
so it's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, we're excited to be able to do it too, so.
I know it.
Oh, yeah,
I know it.
let's.
Okay.
Well, and I guess the other point is if you don't get the demand for that, then this money just recycles back to the general fund.
Exactly.
Right, so.
It's a no-brainer.
So
I mean,
It's
yeah,
easy.
It's like,
Two sixteen number that represents a 10%.
Yeah.
yeah.
216, 160 of that
Is
is the other program.
Other programs.
Yeah.
So, and what do you cover, what, 40, 50 cents out of every dollar that's spent with the revenue?
6 cents, 60.
Yeah, so out of that 160, you're looking at 80 coming back. in revenue.
Right.
So now all of a sudden you're down even further,
Okay.
right? So the increase isn't as marked.
No, we love it. It's
Yeah,
very
it's great.
supportive.
No,
and
it's
really
it's-
well done and well run. So, did you want to do?
We definitely want to do
Yeah,
Aggie, and then we
okay.
actually have Steve for a couple minutes on the pool too.
Okay.
Well, Lapham is back up and running, almost back up to normal.
Really?
Yep,
we have some teachers that are not willing to come in, but our classes are hybrid and in person and on Zoom. And I offer all three for everybody's comfort level. The exercise classes, I've got people doing it from down Florida. They want to keep with their exercise and they go down to Florida for, so I'm zooming them in for a hybrid class for Pilates and for yoga and chair yoga and all of those. So my numbers probably are a little higher because I can get 50 or 60 people on a Zoom call that I can't have in the room, especially during COVID. We couldn't have had that many people together. So, and we've been, and all of last spring, we used all of outside of Lappa. We used the patio, we used the back lawn, and I'm planning on doing that again this spring to get them back in for the ones who are still timid about coming in.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was hopping today.
It was hopping today.
I bet.
Tiger did a
50
program on the
degrees.
transfer station. I kept him busy today.
Yoga and transportation.
And all of my programs, even during COVID in 2020, we were down March and April. I started offering classes on Zoom for a fee and we were flat. So we did not lose money on the program money that we get. We actually were flat when a lot of places were offering all free services and they didn't bring any money in. So our senior center continued to charge for something. We do a lot free anyways, because I do a lot of programming that doesn't cost very much money. We have a lot of volunteers that come in and work programs and teach classes and do that. So.
Fantastic. That's good. That's great. Anything else?
Yes, just Steve.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Stand up.
I think you probably need to come to the mic,
Come
I'm
to the-
afraid. Otherwise, I don't know that they can hear you as well. Thanks, Steve.
Steve has been taking care of running the pool for a while, so.
Yeah, I guess there's been two major complaints basically that Steve and I have heard, probably the last couple of years, and the Parks and Rec Commission Pool Subcommittee and the Town Council Liaison Group came up with a couple ideas. One being have the cleaning company have an attendant on full-time Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We haven't had that in the past. They would just come in once and clean the locker rooms and the facility, and that really hasn't been up to par. So we're recommending, have the attendant come in full-time Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Pool opens 11 to 7:30. The attendant will be there the whole time. And then on the other days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and there'll be one extra cleaning from the attendant every time they come. It's adding an extra $12,000 to the OS contract service, and brings that total to 24,500. The other idea is to have J&J Pool come in and clean our pool twice a week. They come in Wednesdays and Saturdays. We're looking to add $17,100 to the property cleaning for a new total of $33,100. We're taking the 12,000 and the 17 from the contingency.
Yeah, this isn't in your
gonna say,
pages
where-
you're looking at. We figured this out after this Board of Selectmen's meeting. So we're asking if we'd rather, instead of keep coming back to take money from the contingency, we'd like to do it up front. So
Make the change now.
make the change now. So we'd be adding the numbers in and taking it out of the contingency line item that's here.
Is this COVID related or is this a
No,
permanent?
this is
Because of
usage related.
complaints? or
usage and complaints.
people and-
The main
Okay,
complaint
all
we
of it.
get is the pool itself is dirty.
Yep.
And not dirty. That
Yes.
sounds awful to say it that way. Not as clean as it could be.
Okay.
And the locker rooms, putting an attendant on the 3 busiest days is
Yeah,
going to be
well,
huge.
yeah.
That makes great sense.
No,
Yeah.
it's
And
fine.
then the extra cleanings during the week, it's somebody that's coming in and doing it.
I just want to make sure I follow. So for the budget point of view, the budget is what it is. This is a different question. This is really a finance question and a transfer we're talking about.
No, they're talking about increasing for specifically the pool fund budget.
But it's an enterprise budget.
Yes, it's separate.
That's my point.
Yeah.
It's not in the budget, it's
I don't
the
think it's in
enterprise
here.
fund, right? Or am I wrong?
It's just that they're adding it, but it's still in an enterprise budget, which is making money.
In ours, there's 147,000 in contingency, bottom line. We'd be taking it from that contingency upfront.
But you're just adding an expense line. You're not even taking the contingency. So from your income statement, you're having a higher expense for cleaning.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
what it
your
is.
contingency be less.
Well, that's how you're funding it, but you're not changing really, other the expenses are going.
We're not asking for more money. We're not
I
asking
just
for
want to
money
make
from
sure
the
this is
town per
correct.
se.
I was just trying to clear.
Got it.
Sorry.
Make sure I got it.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense and it make, yeah.
Yeah.
The one question I have is when you talk to other pools, is that how frequently they clean them? I would just make sure whatever pool is super clean, we do it like that.
This is on top of what we already do.
Right.
We're gonna have J&J come in and do it definitely 2 times a week.
Yeah. I mean, so just if the other outdoor pool clubs, whatever the standard is.
We're not trying to say that we're only gonna vacuum the pool twice a week.
Right.
The robot will still be used, and we're working on a couple different things with the Y
Okay.
to work that out. It's gonna be 2 more cleanings of
That's
of the
terrific.
pool itself.
That's terrific.
That's what. I
And
thought
multiple
I
more
heard.
cleanings of the locker room.
That's great.
Staying on
Yeah,
top
yeah.
of it. It's like, in the park section, if a piece of litter's on the ground, somebody will throw another one next to it. But if you can keep it clean, nobody throws
Spot on.
anything down. And it's the same thing with the pool.
How much are we turning the heat on with the propane?
I can tell you this, in the springtime, we probably turned on more this year than it ever has.
That was cold.
It was turned on some last year. But it was fairly hot once July 4th.
Yeah,
We
the
didn't
later,
turn it
yeah.
on probably 3rd week of June at all.
It was
Until September. Labor Day was hot too. So we
And then you
turn
wrap it up.
on Labor Day. So. but
Yeah,
it'll
well, the
most likely
propane
be
adds
used
up.
more.
Yeah.
This is very exciting.
Okay, anything else? Any questions from the board? Great job.
No, I think it's
Took over?
That's it.
excellent.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Thank you. And I didn't ask a question about pickle, guys.
Oh, Michael,
We are working on it.
Bob and Michael, were there any questions? I didn't mean to.
No questions at all. Thank you.
Nope, all good.
I think we need to have a board of finance outing at the pickleball ball and
Well,
Michael,
no.
Michael can run it.
Yeah, we'll start at the pool.
Yes, yes, we'll have an outing.
Decathlon.
Yeah, decathlon. 150.
Chief.
Yes,
Good evening. I didn't know you weren't going to be here.
yeah, decided to do remote tonight.
Are we ready? Guys, one meeting. Everyone? Okay, I've got your presentation. You want to make sure who's in control here?
If somebody can let me share screen, I can bring it up.
You want to bring it up or you want? Give Tucker 1 minute, please.
Okay.
All right, you're good.
It's not up yet.
Okay, so it's a net plus.
You should have permission.
It's different.
Fun to watch the wheels spinning.
Yeah, it doesn't quite, it's not letting me share.
Haven't we got it or not? Don't we
Yeah,
all-
he wants to walk. through that.
Tucker, can you share?
The same or?
Hold up, I got 2 computers going here at the same time.
We can run it from here and we all have it on our tablets and some of us have copies. But for the viewers, want to make sure that it's.
Yeah.
That's cute.
There
Okay,
we
now
go.
it's working. No.
Okay,
it's
here
not.
we go.
Okay, we will need to resolve it because I have, the last part of the presentation is about the townwide security initiatives. So hopefully we can get that to work.
Email it to me.
Thanks for everyone's time tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about tonight about animal control, return on investment, 2021 highlights, 2022 goals, capital. We're down 26.7% compared to last fiscal year. Vehicles operating up 3.1%, staffing overtime, and then we'll talk about townwide security initiatives. Hopefully we can get the slides to work. We're very thoughtful, as you know, in building our budget and careful about how we spend the town's money. Next slide, please. Animal control had 262 calls last year, which is quite a lot. They're quite busy. Give you little visualizations of some of the wildlife our animal control officer has to deal with.
Real?
Puppies, that's a great story there.
Look at that.
Bobcat, bear,
No.
kitten, and a hawk. So all kinds of wildlife in New Canaan that our animal control officer has to deal with. And when she's not here, our officers handle those calls. So great work by everyone involved there. I think everybody is pleased with how well animal control serves our town. So our summary is no capital requests for FY23 for animal control, 110408 for operating. And that is related to our animal control officer is retiring in the fiscal year. And we're going to miss her tremendously. And we're going to bring in a replacement, and there'll be some transition time there that will cause an increase for part-time salaries related to that. I expect next fiscal year, and we may not need that, but it depends on what the new animal control officer thinks the needs are. But there's a real shortage in animal control officers in our state, so it's very difficult to find them. So I'm hoping we find the perfect candidate. Police Department, we're going to talk about your return on investment. So that's some of our officers speaking at Lapham Community Center, engaging with the community and giving them great advice so that they can protect themselves. And this is related to scams. Some of our residents there at Lapham Community Center being educated on the latest things going on and being taken advantage of in our town. Officers at a coffee with a cop. We love to do that, interact with the community, get out there, and great work by our officers in that regard. That was a grocery drive. As we all know, there is a certain percentage of our residents that are needy and have food needs, and our food pantry fulfill those needs. And we were able to gather a whole bunch of groceries there and give that to the food pantry to help residents that need that. Another class being taught to newcomers by Officer Coughlin. She was our community impact officer for 2021. Our new community impact officer that is assigned to the center of town is Officer Bartuli. Next slide. It's a Special Olympics run. We partnered with Darien there to engage in that great activity, raise money for Special Olympics and awareness. We certainly love to do that. That's a coat drive. We gathered coats and we provide them to Health and Human Services to give to needy folks in our town. That's a domestic violence drive at the high school. You can see there was a big increase in family disputes. Not all of those were domestic violence that resulted in an arrest, but it's actually a good thing that people are calling us for help. And we like to see that. We like to provide assistance and outreach, and sometimes that results in arrests, but a percentage of times it's not a crime, but it's just outreach and education and resources. So we like to reach out, and certainly our high school population has some percentage of just domestic violence going on. So that outreach is critical. Lieutenant James George, he retired earlier this year after 54 years of honorable service. So kudos to him. He did a great job. He worked really well for our department, and we're going to miss him. And we're about to replace him, hopefully, and come to our full complement soon. It's a little snapshot of major incidents in our town: motor vehicle stops, arrests, a murder, a domestic violence murder we had last year, tragically. Stolen vehicles, we're going to talk about that in a bit, 39, which is a tremendous increase in compared to years past, and motor vehicle accidents. And we're starting to see motor vehicle accidents normalize because traffic patterns are becoming more normal related to COVID, decreases in traffic. So we're going to continue to see those climb, and we'll continue to address those as comprehensively as we can. And next slide.
Keith, just before you leave that slide, please, I think maybe just a couple quick questions. One, some things are down. If I go looking at 2019, 2020, 21, some are up and some are flat. Anything to just take away from this? I mean, I would say the one, I'm not sure where home break-ins are. Was that in larcenies? What would that be in?
No, that would be burglary. So 15, 13, 8. So that's down. And we're seeing those kinds of numbers for burglaries. So that's a good thing. The bad thing is we're seeing pretty significant increases in stolen vehicles and larcenies from vehicles. with some percentage of those, about 20% are actually forced entry of the vehicles. But we're going to talk a little bit more detail in a few slides and towards the end of the presentation. Medical calls also are up slightly, and psychiatric calls are also up dramatically, which we're going to talk about across the board in another slide or two.
Well, thanks for putting this slide together. This is
Oh,
helpful.
yeah,
This is
very.
helpful.
Why are narcotics down so much? I mean, I'm glad they're, but the narcotics have just dropped dramatically.
Yeah, well, more or less marijuana is legalized. And that was a lot of the contact we had with narcotics. So that's resulted in a reduction.
What's the difference between traffic complaints and motor vehicle stops?
So a traffic complaint can be something like someone sees a car broken down and they call it in as a traffic complaint. It could be a road rage incident versus a motor vehicle stop as a self-initiated activity by an officer.
What about suspicious persons' vehicles? What is that, Chief?
So a resident sees a suspicious vehicle in their neighborhood, doesn't belong there, or someone walking that doesn't belong there. They call us, we investigate, and most of the time it's benign. It's not a criminal or someone doing bad deeds, but we do want our residents to call us when they see suspicious instances, because I can relate many times where a crime has occurred and someone had seen something suspicious and they tell us after the fact, and whereas before the fact we can intervene.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So larcenies from vehicles, you can see it's more or less spread throughout town. 43 in 2021 versus 48 and 32 respectively in 2020 and 2019. And the bulk of these cases, 80% or so, are unlocked vehicles with valuables left inside the vehicles. Stolen vehicles, 39 versus 27 and 10. And not too many years ago, we would see a handful of stolen vehicles, if that. So this is all these vehicles, except for one or two, where the owners claim that the keys weren't in them or the key fob wasn't in the vehicle and the vehicle was locked, were unlocked vehicles with the key fobs in them. So that's a kind of a prevention message. I'll show you a video about in a few slides. So it's combined overlay of stolen vehicles and larcenies from vehicles. And it's complementary in a lot of ways in that these folks will come into town. If a vehicle is unlocked and there's valuables in it, they'll steal the valuables. If the key fob is in it, they'll steal the vehicle. And sometimes they'll steal mail. And usually they pass through town relatively quickly and go to another town or nearby city in Fairfield County and commit similar crimes before they go back to where they're from. So highlights 2021, successful virtual law enforcement audit, hundreds of files reviewed to ensure standards are met. Commission on Law Enforcement Accreditation, we're one of only 3 in Fairfield County. Only 13% of agencies in Connecticut are CALIA and less than 5% nationally. So that's something we're very proud of, and we believe it makes us an exceptional agency, and we're proud of the work our officers do to make it an exceptional agency. More highlights, we continue to deal with, though gladly, the COVID-19 pandemic is declining and we're almost normal. Responded to calls for police reform. We continue to struggle with that. Compliance with police accountability. There's a host of laws related to police accountability that we're complying with and dealing with. And that's one of our things that we are continuing to deal with in 2022. Continue to work a complex missing person murder investigation with the state police. And until we find Jennifer, we're never going to rest. But the longer time passes, the more difficult it becomes for everyone. So that's always on the top of our minds. We had a domestic violence murder in 2021. And as I've always said, violence in New Canaan is typically domestic violence. So that was certainly a tragic incident. And as most know, our sworn officer staff is very diverse. Even comparing to similar communities near us, we're very diverse, about a third or so. Most female officers in history, most Hispanic officers in history. And when Lieutenant George just retired, we had the most African-American officers in history. And so that's something we're very proud of, and we're hopeful we can continue to recruit the best officer staff we can. We, in 2021, we strengthened crisis intervention training to more effectively respond to behavioral health incidents, because we know that those often escalate and lead to a lot of difficulties and sometimes criminal behavior. So early intervention there is good. And we also do wellness checks, which we'll talk about in a minute, and continued increase in psychiatric calls for service related to crisis intervention training. And we had a fentanyl death that is an open investigation. So that's our crisis intervention team. It's called Community Outreach and Support Team, or COAST. And they handled 48 incidents. 6% were adults, 34% were juveniles. And they built partnerships with New Canaan Human Services and behavioral health providers. And you can be very proud of the work that they do collectively in the town to help our residents that are in need or at risk. So I'm very proud of that initiative.
Do you ever call Health and Human Services in for an initial call for a family dispute? Or
no, usually not an initial call. It's usually after the fact, a wellness check. Sometimes we do work with them when it's not a direct call of the family dispute, but it might be someone's concerned about their neighbor or their family member, and we need more expertise than we have, and we bring them on board with that. But typically, no, for a family dispute or a domestic violence incident, we wouldn't bring them in on that call, but we will bring them in afterwards.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. We investigated many complex crimes, complex frauds and thefts with arrests, retail crime with arrests, bank robbery with arrests, adult predator, juvenile crimes, victim crimes with arrests, child pornography case with arrests. That became a federal case because of reaching across state lines, and FBI is now handling that case. Many stolen vehicles with some arrests, and we made an arrest of a couple of gentlemen that came from New Haven. They were stealing from vehicles in Greenwich, and they came to New Canaan, found a Range Rover with its keys in it, unlocked, started to steal it. Neighbors called, or the resident called. Officers got there pretty quickly. And the good news is this guy didn't know how to drive, and he ended up flipping the Range Rover over, and we arrested him. And then his brother came to pick him up and implicated himself in the crime, and we arrested him too. So sometimes we are able to make arrests, and we do have a warrant that's pending for someone that recently committed a stolen vehicle theft in town that we were able to track down. So great work by our detectives in that regard. And we had a serious injury hit and run accident with an arrest. So some goals for 2022. We continue to enhance community engagement, focus training on officer safety and use of force, move our PD building project forward. That's a really important one I'll talk about in a few slides. I know everybody's working real hard on that, but that's a real focus point for us. It seems like it's been a long time since we've been discussing it. And I looked back, and I think we had placeholders for capital money going back to 2016. But I appreciate everybody's work, but it's time to make some decisions. Comply with the police accountability law and enhance crime prevention messaging and marketing. So that's our ongoing public education. We're putting flyers on windshields at the parks to alert folks to lock their cars and take valuables inside. So police department renovation. We really love the work that everybody's doing, and the focus is there, but it's time to make some decisions. Our building committee did great work, but I'm very hopeful that a decision will be made soon so that we can move forward on that project sooner rather than later. Our capital summary, request for FY23 is $267,000. That's a 26.7% decrease as compared to FY22. And it's comprised of vehicles and equipment, taser replacements, bulletproof vest replacements, in-car cameras. That's a police accountability legislation mandate. And that's several vehicles to finish up that project requirement of the law. And fixed license plate readers, which we'll talk about in another slide. Speed sentries, defibrillators, the defibrillators actually have an end of life. And those are the devices that we use when someone has a a hard event, and we're able to bring them back most of the time. And some good news from the state of Connecticut is in our original request, we had a fingerprint device for $10,000 in there, but we took that out because the state has told us they're going to provide us with one. And in essence, that allows us to digitally fingerprint folks that are applying for security licenses or pistol permits or other civilian licenses that they need to be fingerprinted for. So we don't need to bring them into our booking area.
So Chief, I see the reference to in-car cameras. Are there any cameras that the officers wear on their uniforms?
Yeah, in fact, we were one of the first agencies in Fairfield County about 7 years ago to have body cameras. So we've had body cameras ever since. And but as required by the legislation and the way the technology works together with the body camera and the in-car camera, now we did have money this fiscal year for body cameras and in-car cameras. So those are going to be implemented very soon, even though currently we have body cameras. We're going to a new system because of the way they work together. And every officer will have a body camera and every marked unit will have a in-car camera system in it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So fixed license plate readers, may not know, but we've had mobile license plate readers for nearly 7 years. No privacy concerns. These devices will be placed in strategic areas in town, and they capture images of both the vehicle and potential identifying details and the license plate. We're going to strictly control data access, storage, sharing, and retention. It has a searchable database. We can put alerts on it for hot list vehicles, stolen vehicles, vehicles we're looking for. So a perfect example is we had a serious injury hit and run, and it took us a number of days to actually track down the offending vehicle. But if we had the fixed license plate readers installed, it's likely we would have tracked that vehicle down within hours instead of days. So it's a really useful tool. Many communities in Connecticut have them. There's no real privacy concerns because they only capture images on public streets and your license plate is not a privacy issue. And the cost includes installation, maintenance, and all related costs to that. And based on discussions with other chiefs and other jurisdictions, it's a proven crime solving tool, and it's very useful. And I'm very confident that's going to help us better solve some crimes that are happening in town, and it may very well prevent folks from coming into town if they know that we have these devices.
You say they've been around for nearly 7 years. You don't mean in New Canaan?
Oh yeah, we've had license plate readers in our cars for nearly 7 years. Yes.
So what's the request?
The request is for fixed license plate readers, so they're not mobile, they're not in vehicles. They're out stationary, they're by the roadside, and they capture license plates.
I'm with the program now. I just got it.
Of course.
And how many are those?
We're going to have 10.
And are they primarily parks or everywhere or?
No, we've identified some locations throughout town, major roadways where we believe that folks are coming into town to commit crimes, and where we believe that we'll be able to gather useful information to help with our investigations. So not necessarily in parks, but near them, and mostly major roadways. So PD vehicles, as we all know, our vehicles are first to respond to all 911 calls. They're considered essential emergency equipment. And our goal is to replace frontline patrol vehicles that have high mileage and high repair costs with reliable and safe vehicles. And the good news is, thanks to the good work of our highway department, our vehicles are very stable, and we have a very reliable fleet. But this request is in line with our 32323 5-year capital plan. So this is 3 vehicles we're requesting this fiscal year in 23. And it's in line with our 5-year plan. So the industry best practice is to replace at 80 or 85,000 miles. Next slide.
Chief, same question. What's your thinking in regards to just availability, timing, everything else. Obviously, this has been an issue we've talked about now for the whole season in terms of various vehicles just not being available.
Well, it's been pretty good. I mean, we've been pretty lucky. There's times when we have vehicles that are down for repairs. And, you know, one of the challenges is we've seen an unusual issue with water pumps failing in some of our vehicles. And it's such an enormous job. It's almost literally, I think they have to take the engine out to replace the water pump. That has to go to a dealership, and the dealership takes a long time to schedule it. But we've been pretty lucky in getting the work done quickly and not having our vehicles down for weeks at a time. Sometimes it's multiple days, but typically we can cover with the other vehicles that are available in our fleet.
No, I was actually asking a slightly different question, just regards to getting new ones and availability with the supply chain of available.
I see. Yep. Yeah, there have been unusual delays in the supply chain for new vehicles. Used to take a few months. Now it's more than double that. So we try to, as soon as we get approval for the monies, we try to order them and get the vehicles moving forward to us. But yeah, it's a nationwide issue.
So does this mean we'll have no more Crown Victorias or just one after this?
That's exactly right. Yeah, we're getting rid of the Crown Victorias. You know, they're no longer manufactured, and these are 2011, so 10 years old. And even though they're very robust vehicles, at some point we're going to need to replace those with the Ford Interceptors, which is the Ford SUVs, and those have proven to be an incredibly reliable vehicle, mostly, except for some unusual items that come up periodically. But across the board, great in all weather conditions and very safe for our officers to operate.
How many did we replace last year?
Two. So two this fiscal year.
Or
We ordered and not in yet. And last fiscal year was 3. So that's a 3-2, 3-2, 3 over 5 years. But you can see here the snapshot. There's multiple vehicles that are over 80,000 miles. And some of the vehicles are out of warranty, which causes us to be concerned about some replacement or some warranty work that's not covered that our highway department isn't able to do or can't do to other obligations. So, but we're very thoughtful of how we manage our fleet, and we've been lucky in a lot of regard. Next slide. It's a benchmarking, so you can look at what other comparable agencies do for replacing their fleet, and you can see we're very conservative, 2 to 3 versus 3 to 5 for Darien. Larger agencies 7 to 9, but even 5 to 6 for Wilton. So something's working for us. The fleet's more reliable than it's been since we've instituted this whole program of replacement. And so that's why I'm urging replacement approval of 3 vehicles for this fiscal year. Go to our operating summary. Operating is up 3.1%. Our request is $6,859,777. And we did add a small amount of money, $5,000 to our repair mobile equipment related to that issue of some of our SUVs having water pump failures. And approximately 97% of the increase is due to labor agreement obligations. We recently settled our labor agreement, and there were some increases there that have to be covered within the budget. Salary offset is something that was new in FY21. In essence, we decreased our budget by 142,074 based on a projected 9-month vacancy due to the retirement or resignation of 2 top step officers. And that is been working well for us. And the last couple of fiscal years, we did finish under budget, and we're slightly under budget this fiscal year. So I'm confident that that will continue. You can see how careful we are with building our budget with decreases and increases. You can see a lot of those increases, salaries, educational salaries, overtime are, and we also balance out our overtime to change based on conditions, but I'll talk about a little more detail in a few slides. PD staffing, currently 7 sworn members are eligible to retire. So that's why it's important for us as soon as we can, and we find the best candidate possible, to get that candidate on board and get them into the police academy. And that's proven to be challenging. There's lots of agencies in Connecticut that are trying to hire. There aren't a whole lot of academy slots. And so it can be challenging to get an academy slot, but we try to look forward and ask for slots based on projected retirements. And but it's been a challenging environment across Connecticut and frankly across the nation. So our ideal staffing complement is 47 officers, and long training and hiring timelines require us to fill the vacancies as soon as possible. Our current staffing, we're down 3 officers due to 1 retirement, 1 officer on long-term injury leave, and 1 officer on military leave. Good news is the officer on military leave is coming back in a couple of weeks, so he'll be back on board. And we did extend an offer to an exceptional candidate. And as long as we get an academy slot, we're going to bring that candidate on board. And that'll bring our complement of 7 female officers if that all goes well. So that's something I'm very proud of and we're able to do. Our staffing challenge, certainly some successes, our school resource officers, everybody loves them. They do an exceptional job in our schools and deal with a whole host of issues in the schools and act as counselors per se and expertise in different areas than the school has. And they work seamlessly with our school and our administrators there and our teachers and our superintendent, and everybody loves the work they do there. And another success is our community downtown officer. That officer is assigned exclusively to the center of town. And this year it's Officer Nicole Vartuli, and she connects with the merchants and has a cell phone they can call for any question they have and reassurance that they might need or things that they need help with. And that's proven to be a great community connection. PD overtime. So overtime request is based on historical spending tied to labor agreement obligations. And our overtime request is less than 10.5% of our aggregate salaries. And nationwide, many departments are 18% of their aggregate salaries. So that's a very conservative number. And so far this year, we're going to be under budget for overtime if all goes well. And we're in line with comparable police departments and town emergency services. So that's a question I ask myself every year before I ask for the overtime number. I think we've done a pretty good job in explaining why we spend what we spend and why we need the overtime. So that's about 10 years of data there. And you can see once we started fully funding the overtime we needed, we are typically under budget except for unusual circumstances like the Doulos investigation that brought up our overtime. But the last few years we've been down, predicting roughly about 530 for this fiscal year, or 525. We have 530. I'm asking for 535 for FY23, connected to some of the salary increases that will drive up our overtime spending, but I'm comfortable with that number. And this is POS. This is our computerized scheduling system that allows us to track. I believe we have nearly 30 categories of spending related to overtime. These just happen to be almost 50% of the spending related to training. Always like to see that. The more we train our officers, the better. Helps them serve the community well. Second supervisor, shift shortage time off, shift shortage sick time, and administrative. So that's a bulk of our spending there. It gives you a snapshot of the why behind our overtime spending. That's our goal, is to adopt a realistic and attainable overtime budget for FY23 based on historical spending and contractual obligations. So our request for FY23 is 535, FY22 forecast is 525, and the actual for last fiscal year was 484,579. So those are certainly numbers we're comfortable with, and we appreciate the money that the town always gives us and the work that you folks do to approve these budget requests. Any questions?
Just on overtime, to make sure I understand, you are forecasting a pretty big jump this year from last year, but flat next year to this year. Is that what I'm hearing?
It's not, I wouldn't say it's a huge jump. I think this fiscal year is 530 and we're asking for 535.
No. Got that. I call that
Yep.
flat.
Yep.
I called that.
Yep.
I was saying, I think in 21, if I'm reading the chart right, we'll have a big jump from 21 to your forecast for 22.
So you mean the actual?
Yeah, actual from 21.
Right. 484 we spent versus 535, yes.
Mhm.
And so I'm predicting we're going to spend 525 this fiscal year. So that 535 will allow us to be under budget. I'm pretty confident of that.
Can you speak to that increase from the previous year?
I'm sorry?
Can you speak to the increase from the previous year?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Jump from 484 to 525 that you're projecting for this year.
Yes.
Question is, what's driving that?
Oh, sure. It's variable. It depends on staffing. It depends on hiring needs, investigations we have. So it's pretty variable in what's driving that. And if we go to that next slide, that's about 50% of the reasons of spending. So of course, we have enhanced training needs related to police accountability that we're trying to accomplish. Some second supervisor is a staffing issue. We need to fill those slots. And other accumulated time obligations cause us to hire back and spend overtime to cover that.
I guess the question is this a new base? Because you've really consistently been in the 400s and even down in the 300s. So now you're saying you're going to do 525 this year, and aside from an unusual year, a pretty high number, and that's going to be the new number for next year. I appreciate it's a forecast, and you've traditionally come under, so I get all that. But
yes,
yeah. Is there anything systemic that's driving that up 10% or 8%?
Yeah, I mean, like we had a salary increase of 2.5%. So that's certainly going to drive things up. And next fiscal year, I believe, is 2-point comparable increase. So we're gonna see that drive up our overtime because that's all interconnected to our salaries. But I think you're right. We're gonna watch carefully what we spend this fiscal year, and if it remains flat with that 484 kind of number, then perhaps we'll bring down our overtime ask for FY24.
So you're expecting kind of sort of the same amount of hours of overtime, but because we're at a different base, that's adding to it.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't change all that much unless we have a dramatic event.
Right.
So it's pretty constant, but it's also a little fluctuating based on staffing. If we have multiple officers out for reasons, that drives up our overtime. That requires us to hire back, et cetera.
Okay.
Chief, one question. What are the car thefts proportionally to locked cars? Because every time I listen to this or read it in the paper, it's about unlocked cars or cars in the driveway or in the parks. How many have actually been ransacked that were locked?
In the parks, it's about 20%.
How much?
About 20% of our vehicles that are entered and stolen from.
Are locked.
No, yes, they're locked because the windows are broken. Yes.
It's amazing.
So that's the unusual crime trend there that we're seeing and other communities are seeing when these folks come into parks. They know that people will often go for a walk and they'll leave their purse or some other valuables in the passenger compartment, and typically the cars are locked. So if they see something they think is valuable, they will smash the window. And this crew of criminals is a lot more distinct than our typical group that comes through. They're professional. They come from down south, and they will hit all of Fairfield County and other parts of Connecticut within a few days, and then they go back down again. And they're very quick and they blend in, and it's kind of seamless. And unless you're watching, you probably wouldn't notice someone out of place out of this group. They would quickly hit the window and steal from the vehicle.
Have you ever, I've seen other police departments have programs where they say, if you bring in your firearm on this day, we will destroy it. Have you ever done anything like that or considered that?
No, we haven't. It's something we've been thinking about, but we haven't yet done that. But people do bring in firearms, and we do send them for destruction. We haven't done that kind of a gun buyback or take back day like that. But people do periodically come in with firearms they don't want in their house anymore, and we do send them for destruction.
What's the
Any other
amount?
questions?
Yeah, a couple, maybe one on, I'm trying to find the actual dollar amount for the fixed cameras,
38,000.
38,000.
Plate readers.
license plate readers,
38,000.
38,000. Okay, and
That's an annual, it's a lease payment per se. So the company is responsible for maintenance, upkeep, connectivity, et cetera. And we're going to try it for, hopefully if it gets approved, we're going to try it for the next fiscal year. And we're going to gather data and see how useful they've been in investigations, and provide you folks next presentation with some detail. And if it's proven to be effective, then we'll continue to ask for that. But, given the technology and is a relatively modest price for 10, we believe it'll be a tremendous investment for us in solving crime.
how long
Chief,
does it get
I had
them?
sorry. I had a question on that too, Todd, if you.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob. Go ahead, Bob.
Those license plate readers, would they be used to basically issue speeding tickets? Because if you put them certain distance apart, I guess you could do a time versus distance speed. That's probably not the purpose, but would they be used for that purpose?
They would not. That's not legal in Connecticut. We wouldn't use cameras for that purpose. And they're exclusively for gathering data, so we can use in investigations.
Right. No, I think it makes a lot of sense. I support it.
My question was, how long does it take to get them operational?
That's going to be a good question. They're pretty quick because from what I understand, they're all kind of independent power. Some of them are solar. Connectivity is cellular. And I think there's some installation, but I think within a few months or quicker, they could be operational and up. I've heard of other agencies that pretty quickly got them operational.
That's not going to help smash and grabs.
Why is gas and oil going up 41.9%?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a national increase. That's based on a forecast from our superintendent of buildings, and he's forecasting it that dramatic increase.
Probably low year over year.
Show my gasoline.
That's right.
Gasoline and oil, yeah, it's going up 41.9%, up
Yeah,
23,000.
But our switching to natural gas for heating the building is down.
I thought this was for the police cars.
Gasoline.
Yes, we spoke about that in my presentation. As Leah mentioned, we do the forecasting for all the departments since we do all the buying. And this year, our consultant is telling us to hold back, not buy early and see. We actually have this, now we're buying a rack rate. So we're actually forecasting a little bit conservatively because we don't know exactly what's going to happen. They're telling us not to buy now. This number's going to come down, but we're using the rates that we have now to forecast for later. That's the problem. So you're seeing a budget increase.
Oil propane is down to 18,000.
Looking at
Gasoline
purchasing
is up
18 months out.
23,000 because
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
This
Oil.
environment.
That's right. How do you know?
Other questions for the chief? Okay.
Yes.
You have a question?
No, I'm done.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
My pleasure. Let me try to screen share the last part of the presentation related to the townwide security initiatives.
Leon, you are a co-host. I see it here, so you should be able to share. If not, you want to quickly email it to me and I'll share it on.
On what?
Yeah, it's odd. It's not letting me bring up my screen.
You have it?
No, he didn't send it to me.
Oh.
I guess.
Let me, I'm gonna log out and then log back in. Maybe that'll do the trick.
Okay. He's co-host.
Other than this, all we have left is 5 minutes on capital and just kind of get a quick summary from you as to where we are. So we'll give Chief another minute here.
Co-host. Yes. Yep, it's working.
Is he back?
He's just looking at right now.
Oh, okay.
He's just pulling up the slides.
Precise.
Good bandwidth.
They need to communicate. So that's what you want to call it. It's really.
Chief, you froze there.
Can you hear us?
It is. They tried to adjust it.
Look, our ratings are going to plummet. We're going to lose viewers.
Yeah, well, they know they want to stare at us, right? You can't even
Not
tell
exactly
who's
sweet,
who.
sweet.
from what
This is sweeps week.
On
Nielsen's
TV.
going to kill us.
I know, but you can't even tell who's who. It's so far away.
Is he still there or do we lose him? All right, why don't we do this? Why don't we, yes, let's do capital. If he comes back, great. If not, I'm not sure what this video was, but. Okay, so what I'd ask Ann to do, everybody, a few more minutes. We're an hour earlier than Tuesday, just saying.
But we have. time for capital.
Was to get a sense as to what is the big number rolling up to? I'd like to, if you have it, a sense of what we think we were gonna pay down next year. What we typically have for, paying down debt, capital, principal and interest. And just get a sense of where we are, because I think this group's gonna have to have a sense as to what it is we have to get a sense as to what we want to commit to capital. I don't think it's the full amount of the ask, so we'll have to think about what that number is, and then we have to go back and think about what we could defer or whatever. So you have a quick summary?
Yeah, we're looking between the 22, 23, it would actually increasing because we did the 25 million back in November. So we're paying half the interest in March. So that's
Okay.
actually an increase there. It didn't drop off because of that. When we go into 20, going into 23, we would increase it about 300,000 for the interest. Again, if you bonded in September, what our typical schedule is September, you'd have the interest in March and it would go up 300.
Okay, and on what number though? What capital amount?
On 20 million. Right now it's at an estimated 22.
Oh, okay.
So it would go up 300, that's half the interest.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
in
okay,
23,
okay.
you actually have 2 years. So 24 is where you'd have close to $1 million jump.
Yep, okay.
Considering the 5-year plan and what that would look like,
Mhm.
bringing forward the
Okay.
next year's bond. and so
Okay,
on.
that's helpful.
And then 26 is where it would actually drop and close again, doing bonding every year
Mhm.
on a
Mhm.
15 to 20 would drop about $2.3 million.
Why is that? Is that something coming
We have
off? Is that
we have some
Irwin?
big ones coming off
Yeah.
from, let's see,
Set.
we have 19
High
coming
school's
off.
coming off. A couple big things are rolling
Yeah,
out.
Stuff.
we have a couple of ones dropping off. And we didn't have, and also
Interesting.
the estimate going forward isn't 20 million every year. It dropped to about 15 because our 5-year ask is basically 25 million, 18 million and 10 million,
Right,
taking
okay.
out the tax supported one.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the ask is different, but also we typically do it as a reimbursement, not an upfront,
Mhm.
but we're pushing it upfront because of the interest rates right now.
Mhm.
So we get that long term. So depending on where the interest rate would go, if you authorize it, we can wait on the bonding to do it after to set it from a budgetary basis.
That's really helpful. So I
Yeah.
think it would be great to see Tuesday the 1st, that laid out for all of us.
Okay.
And it's just assumptions. It's okay. I mean,
Yep,
just
yep.
get that kind of laid
Give me
out
a
for everyone to
schedule.
get their head around. I think that's really helpful. Particularly looking at over 3 years to see the things that
Yeah.
are coming off.
Mhm.
And then the number's 22 million. That's the roll up of
That's-
everything.
The ask right now is 22 million.
It's 22.
And then in 24, it goes to 25. and then it drops
Okay.
off 18 and 10.
And the library or the library.
Yeah, the
police
police,
station
police
is in
department, the
there,
library,
and
get
then
a couple
we
big,
have
a big
Okay.
chunky things. Yeah.
School, the roof
The
for
roof,
schools.
mhm.
So they're about, $1.5 to $2 million a piece that are over the next couple of
Okay.
years. So it would really be looking at it and vetting to say, can you actually move anything?
Right.
Do you want to move it? Can
Yeah.
you move it so that when you get to this 2026,
Mhm.
what can you do to try and get the debt service even?
Yeah, okay.
And that's looking at every single thing that's on the wish list
Oh, no,
from
no, that's
everybody
right.
right now,
Yeah.
right? That's not with any,
That's
yeah.
in the year
with any
we
critique.
authorize
I
it
get-
as
yeah.
well, so we
I,
can
yeah, I
stagger
understand.
it, yeah.
Yeah, I understand.
depending.
Okay.
And we've refunded pretty much most of our items,
Yep.
so there's not a lot of refunding.
Yeah,
It's
so
the
we're-
refundings that are dropping off right at the moment.
If we only approved 18 million, it would be good to just, or 20 million, it would just be good to see what the impact is. It's going to be not a lot from an interest point of view.
For just 23 or? do you want
Just
to-
for this cycle, yes, just
Okay.
for 20. It'd be good, interesting to know. Do we need to put it?
The 20 million.
You gotta look at debt service,
Yeah.
not just
No,
interest.
no, I
Debt
appreciate that, but the
service.
debt service, of course, the debt service gets amortized over that
Yeah.
period of time.
The par,
We
and
should see-
and
that's
it's
what we
level
should see.
par,
That's
right?
why I said we
Yes,
need
yeah,
to,
it is.
Yeah.
level.
we need to see the principal and interest.
And then we also want to pay attention to, like, our goal is to continue, if we are able, to work it down as a smaller ratio, our debt service of our over expenses. That was one of the debt committee, because, we have more debt than other towns. I mean, we have the ability to pay for it, but one of the things we were trying to do is see if you can get the annual debt service down, which gives you the ability to pay more on a current
Yeah,
basis.
that's what I was
One
trying
or
to
the
get
other,
at, the
yeah.
annual debt service number and how much we'd be saving if we didn't have the debt.
Yeah, that was that was the question I asked. What you did is actually better than what I'd asked for, but I was asking just what is our annual,
Oh, what do we pay out?
yeah, what do we
Yeah.
pay out?
Pay out,
It used to be about 13 or 14 million we used to pay down.
17,
17.4.
17.
No, but debt service, I'm talking principal. We were
Oh, I'm
rolling
talking
off
debt
about
service,
14
yeah.
million. but
So-
it
Oh, wait,
is-
principal?
Yeah, I think it's something like that.
So
12.
so that's,
Yeah.
that's still.
That's the question. Will we roll off 15-ish million and add 20? That's one of the
Apart.
questions we need to
Right.
know.
Okay.
And I don't know, I mean, that number, the 20 is arbitrary and the 15, you'll tell me, what are we
Yeah.
gonna roll off?
But that kind of makes sense because we had a number of years, we weren't doing big projects. So we have a couple big projects.
Yep.
It jumps around a little bit.
Just so I'm clear, how much does the 25 million in 23, how much of that is the police department?
I
And how
believe
much-
7.5.
7.5, so you have the police
Don't quote me yet, but I
department
believe.
Over
it's
2 years.
7.5.
over 2 years?
2 years, yeah,
7.25 the
10
first
in
year.
this upcoming year, the ask in 23 is 10, I believe, and then 75.
It's going to be more than 20.
You think
Saying the right thing.
you think it's
Yes.
going up that, really?
Yes.
Okay, well, you get the point. I want to get some of this pulled together prior to
If you build
the March
something,
1st.
everything.
Amy, in particular, look at this, right, and just get a sense as to where, and then we'll just have some decisions to make. And as when
Mhm.
if we're going to pay down 15 or so, do we want to add 22? Do we want to add 17, 18, something a little close? Well, again, that's the discussion.
Well, and again, the point you make too, we authorize it, but the timing is,
That's
Yeah,
right.
the
too.
timing.
it's a very different thing.
That's a good point. Okay. That's all I had for that. Any other questions? I just want to be prepared on the
No,
first to
that's
really have a
good.
little bit of a
That's
detail.
really good.
What else is on our agenda on the first?
No, it was just the finalization.
Okay, so we have time to really do capital right and then go through any changes that we might want to propose. If there are changes, we will go through, we're going to create that list soon and out to the liaisons next week. And I want to make sure that everyone has a chance, if there's any change or any proposed change or idea that anyone has, I want to make sure we vet that before we meet on the first.
Yeah, because we generally drill down a lot more in capital than we have yet. So we need. to do
That's
that,
what
yeah.
the first will
Yeah.
be. Yeah, well, that and we haven't even talked on the
Isn't that
capital
the
supported by
public hearing?
tax,
When's the public hearing?
the 8th.
And we'll have the public hearing and we'll vote on the
Yes,
8th?
same day.
Same day,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And why did we move? Why is that moved?
Because we went through the calendar, we have to have posting, you have to publish in the paper.
Yeah.
After the meeting, we needed enough time to assimilate all of the changes into the program. And then post in the paper.
Oh,
in
dear.
time
We
for-
couldn't do our work on the first and have it posted in time for Thursday.
the
I say
deadline.
because
that's
in
too
prior
close.
It's too
years,
close.
we didn't
Too
do it,
close,
so we
yeah.
did the hearing on the first March meeting.
Yeah.
And then the second March meeting, we voted on.
Right.
Right, we
We
changed
we
it
would
this
have done the
year.
capital.
We
now.
couldn't post a budget for that, have a hearing on. That was the
Yeah.
point. We're not quite done yet. So, well, we have to
Hearing
give
and
everybody a
then
chance.
posted, So we have to And we've done it before where we've done the
Together.
public hearing and the vote on the same day.
Yeah, we have.
We should be in great shape to have all that and just have to. We'll see what happens. Everyone else will say. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay.
Is he back on?
Is he on? Does he want to do it?
Is he
Yep,
on?
okay.
Okay, all right, he's on.
Chief, we're ready for your video. Thanks, Ann.
Sorry for that brief delay, but we're back. So thanks to Tucker for getting this up. So townwide security initiatives, I presented this to the police commission last night and they voted to approve it. Brief presentation to kind of give you an overview of where we're looking to go. It's a $200,000 request based on a revenue line that has revenue in it that we can draw from. So it's not a budget request per se, but I'm very confident that moving this forward with help from Public Works and IT, we'll be able to strengthen these initiatives and hopefully comfort our residents and make things a little bit better in our parks and in the center of town related to crime and investigations related to that. Next slide, please. This is our risk management process. We identified the risk, assessed it, reviewed controls and control risks. So we're going to talk about that, about how we came to the conclusion about what we'd like to do for townwide security initiatives. So crime in New Canaan, stolen vehicles, we talked a little bit about, dramatic increase, car breaks, broken windows in parks, Waveney Park, Irwin Park. Those are two focus areas for these initiatives. It's not quite a crime epidemic per se, but certainly concerning. You saw the news, we had several breaks over the course of 2 days, 5, which is very unusual for them to come back again the next day. So it was 5 in 2022 in Waveney Park, 4 in 2021, and 1 in 2020. So not quite a crime spree, but concerning enough that we want to do something to help make our park visitors and residents feel a little bit safer and comforting. Irwin Park, so far none this year, 4 in 2021 and 4 in 2020. And as I mentioned previously during the budget presentation, these are all vehicles that are forcibly entered, windows are broken, and the vehicles are entered to steal valuables. So actual crime and perception of crime. This is a video that is not cooperating for me, but what it shows is this gentleman recently in a driveway in New Canaan goes up to a vehicle, tries to get in the vehicle, vehicle's locked. What does he do? He walks away and goes to an easier target. So that's a crime prevention message there. And certainly we're concerned about actual crime, and which we talked about, and fear and perception is another concern. So if we have to be thoughtful about how our residents perceive crime, even though actual crime might be as high as they think it might be. So it's a little snapshot of larcenies from vehicles. We looked at that in the previous budget presentation. So literally all over town. Stolen vehicles, once again, combined. Now we'll talk a little about some specifics. We've had a number of complex frauds and thefts, organized retail theft, serious hit and run injury, jewelry store break and enter on Elm Street, residential burglaries and bank robberies. And in all of these instances, these bad guys are coming to town in vehicles. The more smart camera systems we put in place, we believe it'll make our investigations easier, and it may also mitigate some of these crimes from happening. So we're very concerned about that, and we want to do our best to leverage technology to make everyone feel a little bit safer. So cameras are a very useful tool, and I underline tool for a reason. They're not the end all be all, but they are a very useful tool. They're going to help us with investigations. And believe it or not, people still rob banks. That's a bank robbery. People's Bank that was robbed by an armed person. We did capture those gentlemen, and they're awaiting our justice system. But we're very concerned about that. But cameras are a very useful tool, and we're hoping that these initiatives help us with investigations and mitigate some of these crimes from happening. So ongoing partnerships is critical. Public education will continue to do that. So it's not just technology, it's things we need to do collectively for that. Next slide, please. So it's a $200,000 request. Like I mentioned, they'll mitigate some crimes. but crime prevention best practices are essential. We're going to build on and strengthen initiatives in Waveney Park, Irwin Park, and the center of town. And we're going to partner with our great folks at Public Works and IT. And we may need additional funds, but I believe this $200,000 will achieve the bulk of what we're trying to accomplish. And I'll show you that in a slide. So this is a progress report to some degree of Waveney Park. Great work's been done there. A couple more things to do. Some work has been done in Irwin Park, more work to do there. And the center of town, some work there, but more work to do in the center of town than the other two locations. And we'll continue to adapt to changing crime trends and evolving technology options. That's our mantra. We're going to continue to adopt technology when it makes sense for us to use that for crime prevention and crime investigation. So that's our budget forecast. Waveney Park, 25,000, Irwin Park, 75, and center of town, 125. And obviously 25 is the lowest because the bulk of the work has been done there. The town, Public Works and IT have worked extremely hard in getting a management system that works exceptionally well for all the town cameras. And we're just going to build on that and add to that and make it even more useful for us in a lot of different ways. So that's our project management, executing, monitoring, reassessing. That's a really important part. Once we put some of these initiatives in place, we're going to reassess them and change them within reason. We're gonna do it as cost effectively as possible, but make sure that we have stable platforms that achieve the purpose that we need. So our goals are to provide reassurance and comfort to residents, merchants, and park users. We will be providing regular updates to all boards. Anytime you ask, we're going to provide an update. Balance thoughtful and creative security initiatives with privacy concerns. We're very cognizant of privacy of our residents, and we want to be thoughtful about these initiatives. There'll be very strong access controls. Only people that should be accessing them will, and we'll be very careful about that. And ultimately, we want to leverage technology tools to help investigate crimes and enhance public safety. That's really the issue, is enhancing public safety and making sure that our residents know that we care about them, and we're using every available tool that we have to make sure that they feel well protected and secured in our great town. Any questions?
Source of funds?
The source of funding?
This was or was not?
Wasn't there 200,000
Yeah.
pulled down from that extra, it was an enterprise fund, but the
Extra
the line
duty.
item we have for the police
Extra
department,
duty.
right? Yeah, the extra duty number. So the money's there.
That it?
Is that right?
That was it, right?
Yep. My understanding is there's a revenue line that draws percentages on all the extra duty bills that the town processes. And it has, I don't know the exact number, but it has, I believe, more than $200,000 in it, maybe substantially more. I don't know that exact number though. But so that could be drawn from that line.
800. I just want to make sure we understand the source of the funds. So the source of the funds will be a transfer from that fund to cover this. That's okay. So it's not under the capital request. That's what I'm asking. Okay.
Precisely. Yep.
Other questions?
And the total was just those two numbers?
200.
The total is the 200.
Yeah.
Right?
For now,
Okay, all
sounds
right.
like.
Yeah, that's our initial request is 200.
What's the time frame that this could be be operational? And then what
Yeah,
is
the
it-
weather
what
is
potential additional costs?
sure. The weather is starting to cooperate. I think it's going to start getting nicer, so it'll become easier to implement some of these initiatives. We're going to be very aggressive in how we do it. Myself, Deputy Chief DeFederico, and Captain Walsh will all be working on the police side, and Public Works and IT will certainly be helping out as needed. And Chris Kaiser has agreed to help us leverage some of the best technology we can. And we intend to aggressively put it in place and move forward as quickly as possible. I do know there are some delays with technology and ordering items, so that could cause some delays, but we intend to move it forward as quickly as possible once the funding is approved.
Very good. Well, it's a transfer. Is that tonight?
That's the next item.
That's-
Okay,
that's
all right.
the transfer. It's what-
Chief, just one question. This is a very important initiative, so thank you for stepping up on this. Is the 200,000 just for the equipment, or does that include the labor cost and installation cost? Is that all in?
Yeah, we believe it's going to be all in and the bulk of these locations. But like I said, there could be a need for additional funds to button up some of these issues. But we're going to try to be as cost effective and smart in using technology as best we can to try to achieve these 3 different purposes in these locations.
Does that also include like the paddle hut in the Waveney house to monitor? Or is it?
Yeah, well, the good news is the bulk of the work in Waveney is done. So some cameras could be added pretty nominally. So that we believe that 25,000 should allow us to add additional coverage there in a few locations.
Great. Thank you, Chief.
My pleasure.
In the 5-year capital, there's a line that the total's 180,000. So where's the other 20?
Yeah, it's not in our capital. This is not in our capital budget. This is a revenue line that
All
the
in.
town has that we can draw from.
No, you're saying that the expense is 200,000.
Yes.
Okay, so the line item, the fixed license readers is.
Different item. Different item.
It's different.
Yeah.
That's 38,000.
That is in the budget. That is in the request for the 36,000 for now. He's
Exactly.
talking about a different initiative, $200,000 for cameras around town.
Which is not in.
Not there. Well, because it's not a capital item. It's a transfer from the extra duty fund,
This is not the plate readers.
not the plate readers, different item, totally different initiative. And we're going to have to vote on a request to transfer $200,000 from that fund to do this initiative. So that's why it's important to understand this initiative. And if you're supportive and if you have questions, so please ask. Sounds like a great initiative, Chief.
Chief,
Thank you.
how much have we already spent at Waveney? I remember this discussion last year and a couple intervening. How much was already?
I don't have that number.
Can you ballpark it? Was it another 50 or 70? Okay. All right, that's about right, yeah.
Okay. Other questions on this?
And is that sufficient between the 70 and the 25 to
That's
cover all
right,
of Waveney? Because it seems like Waveney is
It's
has
not
a lot
just,
of areas.
it's not just Waveney, it's Waveney and those other Irwin and.
No,
Center.
he's
I
right.
understand, but
No,
25
Waveney was identified as 25,000.
Okay.
Waveney was 25 and the 75. It just seems to me there's a lot of different areas to cover in Waveney. Is that sufficient?
Yes, the bulk of the work in Waveney's been done. Adding a few other cameras won't be all that expensive versus Irwin. Not a lot of work's been done, so that's going to be more intensive and expensive. So yeah, I'm comfortable. We don't intend to cover every square inch of Waveney. There's some critical locations that we're going to add cameras to based on crime trends that don't have cameras in place already. So I believe the 25,000 should be adequate.
Thank you.
Good.
And that'll be sufficient at Irwin in the event when the police move into the house for renovations? That will cover that? Would be enough?
Yeah, so the 75 is for camera systems in Irwin to cover the parking lot and the entrance exit areas. Yes, we believe 75 should be adequate.
But what about if the police move in? Is that a whole together different conversation?
Yeah, that's totally distinct. Yes,
Okay.
that would be a whole separate discussion.
All
It'll
right.
be really safe, the police.
Boy, that'd be super. That would make it safe without the cameras.
You don't need to spend the money. All
Yeah.
right, other questions?
Just put up a sign saying it's covered. by-
Okay, thanks for that. Hang on. We're gonna have to do a motion to approve this transfer. Do you want to explain this, spell out the transfer, Josh?
Sure, it's just a transfer from the extra duty fund into, I guess it's just a capital.
What's the current balance of the extra duty fund?
So as of the end of FY 21, I can tell you it was at $1 million. I don't think it's drawn, it hasn't drawn.
I'm
down.
sure we'll use it.
Why don't we pay the police cars out of there?
Yeah, not tonight's call. but That's a good question.
What else can that be used for?
The police cars.
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
Projects for
What's it there for?
Out of, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let's not have that vote on this vote.
That's right.
Question is a balance, it was a question on the table, it's $1 million is the answer to the question.
Right.
Remember that on March 1st,
Yes.
not for tonight. And the motion is to transfer $200,000 from that fund, I'm sorry, to give a specific. Is it to the general fund for the specific purpose of funding the camera proposal that Chief just?
Would be, but can I say, I was just thinking about that, because you would have to, that's gonna be a rev transfer in, so it's revenue. You're gonna have to increase the budget line on the expense side.
Oh dear, well.
No, this is currently this year.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's gonna come in as a transfer.
You don't want to make it a capital project because the town council has to approve capital projects.
Yeah, it's not
But
a,
for him to
Expend.
expend it, he needs the budget dollars in his expense budget.
Can we transfer?
yeah, that's what I'm asking. Why are we transferring
we
it to the
transfer
general
it to
fund? Why not
the
just?
fund?
I just don't know enough of the capacity, but can we do it in reverse? Approve the use of 200,000 of the extra duty funds from the extra
Yeah.
duty fund and put the expenditures out there. Then you're not touching the
I
general
think that's
fund.
the way to do it,
I
actually.
agree, yeah.
I would say that is
I like
actually the way to
that.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can we get a motion? Can you restate that as the motion?
Motion to approve the use of the extra duty fund up to 200,000 for the cameras
Okay.
from that fund.
Into.
No,
you don't
We
have,
don't
No,
need to
we're
do
just,
that?
we're
Okay,
just
all right.
approving that
Repurpose
fund.
the existing balance.
All
Exactly.
right, okay.
Okay. Good motion. That's the motion.
So
Someone, Judy, second.
Second.
Michael, any questions? Any other discussion?
Judy,
Judy did and
That's
Michael
fine, yeah.
Chen seconded. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 This is good.
Opposed? None? Abstains? Okay, very good. Motion passed. Thank you, Leon.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Yep, nope, excellent. Okay. That's the last item?
Yes.
Okay.
Isn't there one other transfer?
No, we had another one, we removed it, we're gonna bring it back next one.
We meet every other day, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right, motion to adjourn.
Oh, you don't want to go spend time?
Ooh.
with us? You don't wanna-
Not, no, we're done with
Okay, all
capital.
right. No, but I mean.
Second.
Okay, all right.
Second, all in favor? Aye, opposed, none? Thank you all. Thank you, Michael.